It's time for the Black Dragon, ladies and gentlemen. Our name is fAegon. What's up, guys? Happy Halloween. Happy full moon. Let me scroll back down. It's fAegon Day / Trugon / Young Griff gone. How come nobody ever says Griff gone? I just made that up. I've never heard anyone say that. It's right there. You could even call him GriftCon, since it's the whole thing is a con, led by Jon Con and some mummers, because fAegon is the mummers dragon. Or is he? Is he? I guess I shouldn't come down so heavy with my heavy-handed opinion here. We're here to explore all the options. And actually, of course, to my right is Blackfyre enthusiast / traitor, rebel traitor supporter, Blackfyre pretender. Greyways Tim, everyone. Greyways Tim. Welcome to the program again, once again. Damon is in. He's ready for rebellion. Look at him. That's right. His cat, in case you didn't know, Tim's cat is named Damon. He's that much of a traitor.
The thing is, when I got Damon, obviously I was thinking Damon Blackfyre, but I asked him, "Are you a Blackfyre or a Targaryen?" He chose to be a Targaryen. But I think he embraces both ends. He embraces both sides.
A dragon is a dragon, as they say. We're gonna get into that. Now, first thing I want to say is there are some people, Tim, in the audience who maybe have not read the books and have watched the show. And shout out to all of my homies who are in that boat. They don't even know who this guy is. They just know there's somebody named fAegon that we make jokes about, and for some reason we sing the Weezer song with the fAegon lyrics and what's happening. So fAegon, to sort of just lay it out, he is probably the biggest omission from the books to show, as far as a character who did not make it. Arion also did not make it. Euron wasn't in the show either, so basically, but fAegon is really, we call him fAegon because he is probably not Aegon Rhaegar's son. He is probably a Blackfyre descendant, although we will discuss all the different theories and permutations, but that is essentially how it's set up. Okay, so he is somebody that is another contender for the throne. He's been raised in secret by Varys and Illyrio over in Essos, been given this well-rounded education, and kind of like Varys and Illyrio are prepping Dany and the Dothraki to invade Westeros. They've got this other chess piece who is fAegon that they are waiting to hatch and release onto Westeros at the right time. So he has a very big role in the story. He is kind of a foil to Dany and Jon. For the most part, the reader sees him as like a fake version of the last hero or the prince that was promised. But I mean, again, we're going to entertain all ideas. There are people who think, we've overlooked, somebody who's actually even more central. But kind of the idea of the Mummer's Dragon, Tim, is it's a foil for somebody for the hero to fight. And that does appear to be the role that fAegon is here. He's already invaded the Stormlands. Again, for you guys who've only watched the show, the books have paused. Dany is still in Slaver's Bay. Okay? She's actually not. Her people are in Slaver's Bay. She's in the Dothraki Sea, dealing with the Dothraki. So right around the point in the show where she burned all the khals in the tent, which I loved that scene. Even it's not from the books, but great scene. And fAegon, whom Tyrion met in Essos on his way sort of, to Slaver's Bay, is already invading Westeros in the Stormlands. And so it is primed for him to take King's Landing from Cersei, probably, or at least try to, before Dany ever gets to Westeros. So when the point is that when Dany gets to Westeros, the situation is going to be very different from what it was on the show, where it was just Dany versus Cersei. Most likely the person on the throne will be fAegon. And let's start with the Mummer's Dragon prophecy, Tim, because I think that sets up the role of him in the story as far as understanding what the Mummer's Dragon is, what Dany's vision means, and that's pretty much our introduction to fAegon before we even meet him.
Yes. So I have the quote here. This is from Daenerys 4 and A Clash of Kings. Glowing like a sunset, a red sword was raised in the hand of a blue-eyed king who cast no shadow. A cloth dragon swayed on poles amidst a cheering crowd. From a smoking tower, a great stone beast took wing, breathing shadow fire. Mother of dragons, slayer of lies. And these are Dany's vision in the House of the Undying. And she sees a number of things. She sees Stannis. Stannis is the blue-eyed king who casts no shadow. She sees foresees the death of Robb Stark, which is the dead king wearing a wolf's head. But here, this cloth dragon swaying on poles amidst a cheering crowd. This represents fAegon. This is the Mummer's Dragon. It is a sort of puppeteered dragon made of cloth, sort of that like marches through a parade, and a hero might slay it, but it's there to draw the attention of the crowd, get them hooting and hollering. But they're the Mummer's Dragons because it's being propped up by Varys and Illyrio, who originally were Varys is originally a mummer from Myr, and Illyrio is a bravo. He was a sellsword before becoming a magister.
Right, and so this is kind of where it starts when people say, well, what if fAegon is real? And I kind of go right back to this prophecy here. Dany is told separately, beware the Mummer's Dragon. It's a list of descriptions of people that are coming to Dany in Meereen. There's stuff about Victarion and whoever else. And the Mummers, so who's the Mummer's Dragon? Well, like Tim was saying, it's not just the idea of a dragon who's fake, like a dragon of mummery, right? You know, pretend dragon. Literally, Varys and Illyrio are mummers. They're mummers in multiple senses. Varys used to be a literal mummer, but they're also performing illusion and mummery and deception throughout the entire plot, and that's their entire role in the story. Is all their conspiracies and false ideas that they're planting and stuff. So, when we meet fAegon, we call him fAegon. Again, we're going to entertain all the ideas, but I guess I'm not. I guess I'm shooting it down right now. Sorry. So with fAegon, we meet him on the pole boat, right? Tyrion is on the pole boat going down the Rhine with Jon Con, and we meet this boy, fAegon, he's hiding out as Young Griff. So there's layers to the disguise. But Tyrion figures out, oh, this is supposed to be Rhaegar's son. Although it appears that Tyrion also doubts that truth as well. And we've got all the quotes about that. But essentially the point is, he has been raised by Illyrio and Varys, because we know that Varys is working in tandem with Illyrio. But it's out and out said, like Illyrio is acting, well, I guess Jon Con is more like the foster father. Illyrio is probably his real father, which again, we'll get to. But there's no question that he is the dragon, meaning the Targaryen potential candidate for the throne, who has been raised by mummers. He is backed by mummers. So there's no question he's the Mummer's Dragon. And then as Tim said, in a story, Dany explains the Mummer's Dragon is sort of a name for the character who is there to oppose the hero. It's somebody for the hero to fight. And and also the title Dance with Dragons, A Dance with Dragons, sorry. Dance with Dragons. A Dance with Dragons is a title that obviously refers back to the civil war that we're seeing play out on House of the Dragon. Targaryen versus Targaryen civil war with dragon riders on both sides. And so it's calling the book 5 A Dance with Dragons. We don't see a civil war between Targaryens in that book, but we definitely see one being set up, and that is Dany versus fAegon.
Yeah. So if we want to approach fAegon from all three angles, that would be one that Trugon But there's Aegon Blackfyre, and then there's option 3, which I call the Gaiman Palehair option, which is that he's neither Targaryen nor Blackfyre, but just a kid with the right look. But I think, as you'll see
I'm
in my
sorry,
notes,
Tim, I've got to stop you. The third option is called the Pisswater Prince option. Let's call it what it is. We'll explain why it is the Gaiman Palehair option, but in the books they talk about this as the quote Pisswater Prince, which just means any old kid from Lys or Lice who has the right look, like Tim was saying. Carry on.
Yeah, and also because the Gaiman Palehair option does include Trystane Truefire, so can't forget him.
Which it's funny because the people who support fAegon being real, they call him Trugon, and literally his parallel is Trystane Truefire. So perhaps let's start with the Moon of the Three Kings parallel before we dive into the historical sources for these three characters. But let me just frame this real quick. fAegon is, like we said, he is probably a Blackfyre, but it's not like, oh, we've solved it and that's the point of his character. The point of his character is that the people in the story various people are going to believe one of these three truths about him. And what they believe about fAegon is going to have a big effect on what they do. Okay? So some people will think that he's Rhaegar's son, come back, or they will decide to go with that. We're like, yeah, close enough. That's what we want. Sounds good. Rhaegar was good. You know, Cersei and Tommen and all this stuff. This isn't going well, right? Joffrey, okay? Then there's going to be people who believe that he is a Blackfyre because Dany is the slayer of lies. And the litany in the Undying Vision is giving her these things, Mummer's dragon, blah, blah, blah. And then it says, you know, daughter of dragons, mother of dragons, slayer of lies. So this idea that fAegon is Rhaegar's son is a lie that Dany will probably expose somehow. So at some point, people will also believe that he's actually a Blackfyre. I don't know to what extent Illyrio and Varys might get exposed, and we'll talk about that. And then some people might also believe, like I think Tyrion does, that he's a nobody, just a boy with the right look. So those three possibilities, even though it's pretty easy, I think, for the reader to come to the right conclusion on which one is real, it's still important to understand all three because they're going to drive the story. And so Tim, being the smart cookie that he is, has discovered that all three of these possible realities have an origin in, of course, medieval European history, which George loves to pull from. I'm not very good with that stuff. I find it a little dry compared to, like, you know, ancient mythology or whatever. But Tim is going to explain that. And then the other part of this is during the Dance of the Dragons, the war between, you know, Rhaenyra, the Blacks and the Greens, and the Hightowers and all that, there is a time, and we're not going to really spoil anything, but there is a time later in the war when King's Landing is not possessed by either side. And it's there's like a month of anarchy. And it's called the Moon of the Three Kings. And I will get that super chat in just a second. And the Moon of the Three Kings, remember, a month is called a moon in Ice and Fire. So the Moon of the Three Kings means it's a month when three different people claimed kingship. And Tim has noticed that all three of these different pretender kings during the Moon of the Three Kings, each one is a parallel for one of the potential truths of fAegon. And so what Tim's about to do, is to first explain the Moon of the Three Kings, and then we're going to show you how each parallel matches the potential reality of fAegon. And then we're going to go back to the historical precedent for each. And during the course of that, it'll give us a good chance to talk about the ins and outs of his character, because this is a character analysis stream. fAegon is a very character-y character in that he's primarily there to drive the plot. Okay, he's there, he forces other people to make choices and to feel a certain way about him. So we have to talk about how he influences everyone. So with that said, Tim, tell us a little bit about the Moon of the Three Kings, and prepare to be interrupted at any moment, because we all know that's how I roll. I have ADHD. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Tim, you have supporters in the comments that are standing up for you, and your constant victimization at the hands of my interruption. I will try to do my best and pick a good time to interject. But people have noticed that you're on the left today and not the right. And that is because we are really going on your research. You're driving the ship, and I am here to snipe with comments and opinions. So,
sure.
Moon of the Three Kings, take it away, Tim.
Sure. All right. So the Moon of the Three Kings is an event that happens during the Dance of the Dragons. So this is in Fire and Blood during the Rhaenyra Overthrown section. This is after King Aegon II has disappeared. He has had his fall from Sunfire, broken both of his legs. He's presumed dead, but nobody really knows where he is.
Oh, easy with the spoilers, Tim. Easy with the spoilers.
But well, this is okay. I guess I should give a spoiler warning, because this is all dance events. The Moon of the Three Kings is all dance events. So
we'll try his best. Oh, the super chat. Thank you. Let me grab that, and we do have to recognize our supporters here in the chat. I think Darkstar is Blackfyre, not fAegon, because solar figures are fire figures, and what is a Darkstar but a giant Blackfyre in the sky? So look, Brian, the Darkstar and the Blackfyre is absolutely the same symbol. Drogon is a black dragon who blots out the sun, just like Darkstar does in that chapter, and he also breathes black fire. So the shadowing of the sun and the black fire, that's all the same symbol. However, Darkstar is not a Blackfyre. He is the reason why the Danes have Targaryen looks. It's not just Darkstar. Remember, Ashara has purple eyes, and Edric Dane has purple blue eyes and silverish ash hair. That is because they are Great Empire of the Dawn descendant. We don't have time to explain the Great Empire of the Dawn, but in my opinion, that is where those looks come from. He's not Targaryen or Blackfyre. But do you think there's any chance that Darkstar could be Blackfyre? Am I overlooking something there, Tim?
No, I think Darkstar is going to be fake Arthur Dane for fAegon. I've had this idea that fAegon's going to have all of these airs of legitimacy, and it's going to be like he's going to have like his entourage of fakes and pretenders just in the Golden Cup, because the Golden Company, any man in the free companies can claim whatever name, and they're claiming the names of extinct houses, which probably means which may be true or something they're just trying to do to make a claim when they get to Westeros. Same with Darkstar. Darkstar will be his fAegon's Arthur Dane, just as Rhaegar had the real Arthur Dane. I've also believed that when they're taking of Storm's End through Folly, it might be through Edric Storm. Edric Storm would be a fake Orys Baratheon to fAegon.
Then, hey, very nice. I like that. Yeah. And by the way, yes, Darkstar, the lyrics to Darkstar are a big influence from the Grateful Dead. If you check out the Dane Iceberg, there's 2 parts. At the end of part 2, hey, Devoted to Mariah, at the end of part 2, we went through the Darkstar lyrics and tried to trace out some of the inspirations that made its way into Ice and Fire. So, yes, you're correct, and check that out if you're a Darkstar, if you're a Dead fan, if you're a Deadhead. Cool. All right, so, and yes, it is beautiful, people in the comments defending Tim, sweet, gentle man, patient man who always lets me finish before he starts talking, and here I am butting in. It's atrocious, and I do appreciate y'all standing up for Tim. I don't ban those people. I don't. I just take the admonishment like, man, move on. Tim, go ahead, take it away, buddy.
Okay, so going back to Moon of the Three Kings. So during the chaos, during the dance, up come 3 pretenders, and they're each ruling from the different hills named after the conquerors. So we have Gaiman Palehair, Trystane Truefire, and the Shepherd. So the Shepherd, for his part, he's actually very anti-Targaryen, anti-dragon. So his story is actually completely separate. In fact, like the Shepherd's probably someone who could use his own character study, because he's representing more of the faith, and the faith's anti-dragon stuff, like the what was the name of the warrior sons that Maegor had banished. The Shepherd's like, he is in his own way trying to revive that. He's got
I
more
think
of that
that's going to
end.
be in season 3 or 4. I can't. I
Mhm.
haven't. I forget. I looked at the mapping out. It's not going to be in season 2. And Tim and I will reread all of Fire and Blood that is going to be translated into House of the Dragon season 2 very soon. And the Shepherd stuff is mostly in, probably going to be in the 3rd season. But yes, it's some of the best stuff. Anytime George gets into the Mad Prophet thing, like there's a great one in King's Landing preaching about the comet and stuff in the main story. The Shepherd is like it's like George going back to have a second bite at that apple and taking a much bigger bite. But yes, okay, so back to our 3 candidates. So what are the three kings? What are their names again?
So Gaiman Palehair, Trystane Truefire, and the Shepherd. So
Well,
for
the
the purposes
Shepherd
of
is not a king. He puts forward somebody, right?
no, the Shepherd's just referred to as a king because he's preaching from the third hill. But
Okay.
he's when people are asking him like what does he proclaim should be the king, he's trying to steer people saying no, the faith should be in charge. He would rather see like the High Septon be a king.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's fighting for a theocracy is what the Shepherd's doing.
Okay,
But
sorry, go ahead then.
yeah. The other two, Gaiman Palehair and Trystane Truefire. So Gaiman Palehair is a very young child. He's only about 4 or 5 years old at most. And so he's being used as a tool, mostly by his mother and her paramour, who is named Sylvena Sand. So his mother Essie is a sex worker. She claims that Gaiman is a bastard son of Aegon II. But she also has this paramour, this girlfriend, Sylvena Sand, so she's bisexual. But the two of them are pushing the claims of this very young child, and they are ruling from Visenius Hill. And they're able to get this like traveling court of whores, mummers, and thieves, sellswords and drunkards, who are propping this kid up with violence, with intimidation, and he's making all of these decrees that like the poor will be given free bread and beer. Everyone that the rights of women will be respected. And it becomes very obvious that this is his mother and his mom's girlfriend that are making all these demands, but they're pushing it forward. He's very much just a tool, just a kid being manipulated and used by the adults around him.
So here this is a good tie back to the Dark Star and the idea that George is a deadhead. It's like a little psychedelic hippie rebellion broke out. A couple of lesbian, sex workers passed all these reforms for the people. Like, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? We can't have that. But it's funny. It's like George showing you that even in a repressive medieval society, the other ideas are always there. They're lurking under the surface, and given enough room to breathe, little flowers of freedom will sprout. Just for a second. Yeah, Gaiman Palehair is very likable. Go ahead, Tim.
And then the other one, so there's a second kid, bit older, old enough to know better, but someone who still goes through with things, and that's Trystane Truefire. And he is championed by a knight named Sir Perkin the Flea. Sir Perkin claims that Trystane is a natural son of Viserys the First, and that's just a nice way of saying a bastard. But Sir Perkin begins rallying support for Trystane Truefire by knighting anyone who will declare for Trystane, because any knight can make a knight. So Trystane's just knight. So what Perkin the Flea does is anyone who supports Trystane, he immediately gives them a knighthood, or if they just bribe him enough. And that's how we get this army of what is referred to as gutter knights. They're just sellswords and thieves fighting under the banner of knighthood. But this relates back to the Golden Company, because the Golden Company in their own way are these forms of gutter knights. These are guys who claim Westerosi descent, but they're living in Essos. And the concept of knighthood is pretty foreign in Essos. But they're laying these claims to like extinct houses because they think, well, this is just a temporary setback. We're going home, even though they're carrying on the grudges of their grandfathers, maybe even their great grandfathers at this point. For all the current Golden Company, for the most part, is they're born and raised in Essos, but they see themselves as Westerosi. The problem with that is that when they cross the Narrow Sea, is that going to be recognized, these Knights of Essos, considering that they've never set foot in Westeros, even though they claim heritage?
Okay, so that's the easiest one to spot because he's out and out. His claim is that he's a bastard son of the king. So that's obviously a parallel to the idea that fAegon is a Blackfyre, which is a whole bastard line of Targaryens, right? So going back to the first option, what that is a parallel to what?
So Gaiman Palehair is so what this paralleling is
Sorry, go ahead.
George has made no secret that that a lot of his inspiration came from the War of the Roses. So in the War of the Roses, we have the houses Lancaster and York, and those are the basis for Lannister and Stark. However, by the end of the War of the Roses, neither house is left in charge. Rather, we see the founding of the Tudor dynasty under King Henry VII. But just like how any new king is it's always a rocky start for new kings, especially when you are starting a brand new dynasty. And what ends up happening is during the years of King Henry's reign, a number of people will come forward with claims, and their own claims to the throne, either through House York or through House Lancaster or some other kind of links to the Plantagenets. And there are two big ones that there are Perkin Warbeck, who is what Trystane Truefire is based on, and then there is Lambert Simnel, who is who Gaiman Palehair is based on. So Lambert's story, real quickly. Oh, are you muted? Did you want to say something?
I was just trying to pipe in with the Lambert the Sheepish Lion joke because I love that cartoon. Lambert. Okay, but I wanted to finish the Moon of the... I kind of set you off course, I guess. I want to finish the Moon of the Three Kings before we get too heavy into the history. And what I was trying to get from you was, who is Gaiman Palehair? What fAegon identity does he parallel?
Oh, so Gaiman Palehair would be the Pisswater Prince. Gaiman Palehair himself is he's called the Cunny King because his mother is a sex worker. Right. And for fAegon is called the Pisswater Prince by Tyrion because of the story that fAegon tells him, which is the story that he has heard from Jon Con, which is a story that Jon Con has heard from Varys. This is the story that Varys has concocted. So when fAegon tells Tyrion about the story of a tanner's boy, like there was that. So to break it down, I'm just going to remove the hood. I was doing it because of the Sith jokes from last week when I wasn't around. Okay, so the story that fAegon tells Tyrion, and this is from Tyrion 6 in A Dance with Dragons. That was some tanner's son from Pisswater Bend whose mother died birthing him. His father sold him to Lord Varys for a jug of Arbor gold. He had other sons, but he had never tasted Arbor gold. Varys gave the Pisswater boy to my lady mother and carried me away. Aye, and when the Pisswater Prince was safely dead, the eunuch smuggled you across the narrow sea to his fat friend the cheesemonger, who hid you on a pole boat and found an exile lord willing to call himself your father. It does make for a splendid story, and the singers will make much of your escape once you take the Iron Throne, assuming that our fair Daenerys takes you for her consort. So the story that they've crafted is that Varys finds a baby who looks enough like baby Aegon, Rhaegar's son, and he buys him from this guy's drunk father in exchange for some Arbor Gold, a jug of Arbor Gold wine, and that there is a baby swap. And so the idea is that the baby that the Mountain killed, that Gregor Clegane kills during the sack of King's Landing, is not the actual Prince Aegon, son of Rhaegar, but this Tanner's boy that they've swapped out. The problem with that is that how would Varys know that the Mountain was going to kill the baby the way he did? Because what we're told is that the Mountain bashed the baby's head against the wall, caved it in. So he is completely unrecognizable when Tywin lays the bodies of Rhaegar's children before Robert. But again, it's like that's assuming a lot. That's assuming that Varys would have to know in advance that was going to happen in order for this ploy to work, for people to be able, because it relies on nobody noticing that that's not the right baby. But when it's dashed in such a way that to the point past recognition, where it's just a bloody pulp and you can't make out any features, no one can lay the claim that, hey, that's not the right kid, that's a different kid. There's also so many witnesses to this, because you have the Mountain who committed the heinous crime. You have Tywin presenting the bodies. Robert's there. Kevin Lannister is there because Kevin recalls this. Damn it. Kevin recalls this in the epilogue to Dance with Dragons before he's murdered by Varys. And then Ned Stark is there because Ned sees the look on Robert's face, and it's Robert's reaction to it and how he's pleased with being presented with the bodies of children that causes Ned's and Robert's falling out. So for me, the idea of the Pisswater Prince and the baby swap, I think there's too many witnesses, too many big names that were there to make this plausible.
I tend to agree with that. And even if you want to suppose that Varys took advantage of, he just, like, maybe the events just unfolded that way. First, he smuggles the baby out to save the baby and throws another baby in its place and just thinks a baby's a baby, maybe no one will notice. And then it just worked out a little extra conveniently. And George wrote the head smashing so that there's plausible deniability. In general, I think you're right. It's one of those sort of circumstantial details that by itself, it's not conclusive. It just shows you that, the whole thing is a little sus. And that's why Tyrion is like, it's a nice story. Mm-hmm. But you can tell. Do you want to go ahead and read that Tyrion passage? I can find it.
I did read it. It does make for a splendid story. That was the passage.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. I thought it was longer, I guess. Yeah, well, there's a lot of dialogue in that passage, in those chapters, rather. And, of course, there's a bit of foreshadowing in the Syvas game itself, which there's a bit about keeping your dragons close, and then Tyrion uses his black dragon to put fAegon in check, basically. So it's possible that Drogon might be the slayer of lies in a way, meaning that fAegon, we can't, okay. There are historical parallels that suggest that fAegon might get eaten by a dragon. I'll just say that. So, yeah. Okay, so the shepherd. Explain the shepherd and his parallel to fAegon, because I actually don't understand that.
Well, that's the thing. The shepherd doesn't have a parallel to fAegon. He's more representative of fate. That's why I said the shepherd's not really involved in the Moon of the Three Kings. It's Gaiman and Trystane that are this. The shepherd is more parallel to the High Sparrow than if we want to make parallels to current events, the shepherd is the High Sparrow.
I see. Okay, that's interesting. So
if we're looking at this idea of history repeating, fAegon's like a twofer, both Gaiman and Trystane.
Okay, so that was my fault then. I misunderstood what you were saying and said all three were supposed to be parallels. It's just the two kids that are parallel to him. The shepherd is parallel to the High Septon, who will be the other power in King's Landing, when fAegon is on the throne, which is why that makes sense. Is it possible that Tommen is supposed to parallel one of the kids?
Yeah, Tommen's probably more the Gaiman pale hair, because Gaiman's whole thing is that he's a kid being manipulated by the adults around him. Oh, and just as Essie is a sex worker with a Dornish girlfriend, Cersei, well, if we take from that line from Jaime of like the Queen of Whores, Cersei as a Queen of Whores figure, which is what Essie's representing herself as the mother of this king.
Oh, I see. And then the democratic reforms are just, it's an inverted parallel. Cersei passes undemocratic reforms. I get it.
Yeah. And she has a Mirish, what's that one? The woman that she like sexually abuses, but is trying to get her kid. She wants her kid to be friends with Tommen. But she's a Mirish woman. I'm just blanking on her name.
Oh, Tanya Merriweather.
Tanya Merriweather, thank you. Yeah, so the parallels are there.
AKA Mirror Swamp.
Yeah, the Mirror Swamp.
Sorry, I can't let that one go. Can't let that go. That was a gift to the fandom. We have to enjoy that. Sorry, guys. I don't make the rules. That's just the rules.
Yeah. So Tommen would be more like Gaiman because of the age. These are of very young kids who are proclaimed as kings, but all of their decrees are really coming from the adults around them. Gaiman's decrees are coming from his mother and his mom's girlfriend. Tommen's decrees are coming first from Kevin Lannister, who is trying to do a good job, which is why Varys kills him. He's doing too good of a job. And then I guess what we're to assume is that come Winds of Winter, Cersei's the one who's going to be taking the reins, and it's going to be her decrees put out there in Tommen's name.
Oh, it's going to be delicious. Cersei fully empowered, just, fixing all the problems in the law code. That should be good. I actually have a great PayPal question that came in from John, who asks, any thoughts on whether Bloodraven may have anything to do with fAegon, as he's known, for killing off as many Blackfyres as possible? Some people believe that Bloodraven has been trimming the Targaryen family tree. We know he's killed many Blackfyres when he was Hand of the King. But some people also believe some of these weird deaths of various Targaryens that led to, Egg being king, the fourth son of a fourth son, and then eventually Rhaegar and all that stuff. The Bloodraven has done all that. So I guess the question is, do you think there's any Bloodraven involvement in the bloodline that led to fAegon? I would think that the answer would be no, because if anything, he'd be trying to kill someone like fAegon, not help them be born, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if fAegon is a Blackfyre. We know how Bloodraven responds to Blackfyres.
Speaking of which, I have a picture of that here. This is Bloodraven with the head of Aenys Blackfyre, who was invited to King's Landing under a truce banner and then promptly beheaded for being a Blackfyre traitor rebel scum that he is. And so I do always appreciate this artwork by Lord Cryraven, fellow Maynard Plum fan, clearly. And real quick, let me give you some artwork. This one that was on the screen was by Mark Simonetti, and this is, of course, Aegon, King Aegon IV, Aegon the Unworthy, knighting Daemon Blackfyre with Blackfyre, starting all the trouble. In other words, no, we have not talked about Bright Flame yet. That's deep in the weeds. We'll get there. This is the continuation of the problem. Daemon Blackfyre himself, he just looks the part. So a lot of people rallied to his cause. Love this. This is Mike Hallstein, and it's worth zooming in on Blackfyre because, yeah, that's sick. Let me just go ahead and, yeah. The king who bore the sword, right, Tim?
Yep. That's Eustace Osgrey's man crush right there.
That's him. You could see why. Hey, not bad, not bad. And then this is The Death of Daemon Blackfyre at Redgrass Field by Mike Miller. This is Bittersteel by Mike Hallstein, the one who just did this Daemon art, same artist. There's Bittersteel. Pretty captured the essence here, I think. It's very, very good. This is more Redgrass, so this would be Lynn Corbray, right? Or Gwen Corbray would have been. Correct?
Gwen Corbray, yeah. He overruns Grain Corbray, and that's what leads to his downfall, his chivalrousness in trying to have Corbray tended to by the Maester.
All right, so I got a super chat I need to answer real quick. I didn't answer it because I didn't know how to really fit it into the topic or even how to answer it really, but I will do my best. Let's see. If George put as much thought into symbolism, he never could have wrote the first 3 so fast. Yes, he could have, and he did. I don't know what else you wanted me to say to that. Like, it's not... That's why I said you were kind of trolling me there, because, like, I don't know, like, how am I supposed to argue with that? You're just making a baseless assertion that you know how long it takes to write a book with symbolism and that George didn't have enough time to do that. But he did, clearly, because he did do that. So I can't help you. I mean, my entire channel is kind of like trying to convince you that symbolism exists in Ice and Fire. So if it's not convincing for you, then I don't know how to like say it in 2 sentences and convince you. Thanks for the super chat, but I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do with that. Carry on, Tim. Let's see, where were we? Oh, we've got Jon Con here. Let's go back. That's Maley's the Monstrous. Let's leave this up for a second.
All right, so...
I think the challenge, I don't think the symbolism, here's what I can say. The symbolism doesn't slow him down. The symbolism is his outline. He doesn't work with a plot outline. He has a loose idea of where the story's going. But because he's using repeating archetypes, because everyone is Azor Ahai or Knight's Queen or somebody, he's got these archetypes to work from. So when he's creating characters or creating a scene, it's not starting from scratch. He's got these archetypal actions and movements and characters and roles and actions that he wants to keep showing us different facets of. And so I think that mostly the symbolism layer enables him to write the story faster, doesn't slow him down. The things that he's talked about slowing him down are more like the regular plot stuff. The order of everybody arriving in Meereen and how that affects Dany's plot. That's the Meereenese knot that he had to rewrite like 3 times. So that's my opinion. I'm just speculating, but I would think that the symbolism doesn't really slow him down. And I think that his pace has slowed down because the story's gotten more complicated, and because he's obviously a lot more busy making TV shows and stuff. So, but getting back to fAegon.
All right, so we
Tim,
were okay. Yeah, we were talking Gaiman Palehair and Trystane Truefire as being parallels to fAegon, and then we were relating that back to the real life people that George took from to create these characters. Okay,
so let me turn you loose on that then. Now that we've got the rough idea of who these 3 kings are, let me go ahead and it's especially that Perkin Warbeck stuff. But go ahead and set that up and tell the story the way you need to so that it makes sense. Fisher Price, my first medieval history lesson. Go ahead.
Okay, so War of the Roses ends. Neither House York nor House Lancaster takes charge. Instead, we get the new Tudor dynasty under King Henry VII. But King Henry is plagued by pretenders coming forward, people claiming to be like, no, I'm the real king. And that is a real life thing, especially when you have a new king, things are always rocky. It's why when early into Robert Baratheon's reign, the Greyjoy Rebellion happens. People are always going to look to start testing those waters when you're trying to establish a new dynasty. Gaiman Palehair, for his part, is based off of Lambert Simnel, who was a very young child who was pushed forward by the adults around him to make a claim. Now, when Lambert was found out to be a fake, he was pardoned because he was a very young child. The adults around him were punished, just as with Gaiman Palehair. It is through torture that Essie, his mother Essie, says that, okay, no, he's not actually Aegon's son. He's just the son of some Lyseni oarsman. Now, we can take that with a grain of salt, though, because that confession comes from torture. The point is...
That's right, Tim. That's right. Thank you for just noting that clearly. And just give me like 15 minutes for these red marks to fade away, guys. I don't want to wear the thing the whole time. And it's... Anyway, but yes, thank you, Tim. Confessions obtained under torture are not reliable. This is true. Carry on.
Well, just as Lambert is pardoned because of his age, so too is Gaiman. And instead... Lambert is offered a place at court as a scullion and as an assistant to the king. The same thing for Gaiman Palehair. He becomes Aegon III's food taster and his whipping boy. And then there's another pretender, and this is Trystane Truefire, and he is based off of Perkin Warbeck. So that's where George gets that name, Sir Perkin the Flea. So he's borrowing the name Perkin from this real-life person, Perkin Warbeck, and making Perkin the Flea the champion of Trystane Truefire, who is the Perkin Warbeck parallel. And what Perkin Warbeck does is he comes forward claiming to be Prince Richard. So during the War of the Roses, it is King Edward IV. He is the king during the majority of the war, but he dies in 1483, and he leaves behind two young sons, Edward and Richard. So Edward's the older brother, Richard is the younger brother. Edward is only 12 when his father dies. Now, normally what should have happened is Edward should have been crowned as Edward V, and there would have been a regency overseeing him until he came of age. This is just what happens with Aegon III. There's a regency because of how young he is. Then when he turns 16, he dismisses and becomes king.
Right.
What happens, though, is this does not happen, though, because their uncle, Richard, who is the Lord Protector, so Edward is the king, but he doesn't get that Lord Protector title. Their uncle, Richard, takes that. But then he has the boys imprisoned in the Tower of London. And this is the story of the princes in the tower. So
hold on. Richard, this is what Renly wants Ned to do. Ned is the Lord Protector, and he's like, take Cersei's kids and imprison them and take the throne. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So Ned is Renly is setting Ned up to be a Richard III parallel, but Ned doesn't go through with it.
So, and this is just, I want to point this out. George loves to do this, and this is a good thing that you can do as a writer, is take a historical parallel, but then zag when the story zigs. Find an interesting point when the story goes one way, and in your version, make it go the other way and see what happens, and that's what he did with Ned. So carry on.
Yeah. So this is so Richard III this is also where we get inspiration both for Tyrion and Lannister. Tyrion Lannister and Stannis. They're both Richard III.
They're evil uncles. Yeah.
The evil uncle type. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what Richard does is he has his nephews imprisoned in the Tower of London. He usurps the throne and he has himself crowned King Richard III. Meanwhile, the two boys, these two princes, they just disappear. Now, most likely, they were more than likely murdered under orders from their uncle to clear obstacles. But nobody knew that at the time, and with no bodies were found, so no way to confirm. So what happens is eventually...
That's a problem in our fandom too, isn't it, Tim?
Nobody... That's a problem with a lot of stories, is the no body thing. It makes for so many theories. So in 1485, the war ends with King Henry VII taking the throne. But then a couple years later, in 1490, up comes this guy, Perkin Warbeck.
And King Henry is like Robert.
Yeah, King Henry's like Robert. So
if you've ever been to a Renaissance fair, they usually have King Henry VIII, and he looks like Robert Baratheon, like when you see him. Late stage Robert Baratheon. And a little bit of Aegon the Unworthy, but go ahead.
Yes. So we're only 5 years into Henry's reign, so this is a brand new dynasty. It's still finding its legs, and this is why I use the Greyjoy Rebellion as a great idea, because that happens only a few years into Robert's reign, testing the waters. Yeah. So 5 years into Henry VII's reign, up comes this guy, Perkin Warbeck, but he claims to be Richard, the younger of the two princes. He claims to be the younger brother. And the thing is that he's at the time, he's at the right age. If Richard didn't die, if Prince Richard, I guess we could call him Little Richard to distinguish him from his uncle. if Little Richard hadn't died, when Perkin Warbeck shows up, he'd be at this age. He would look like, and it's noted that Perkin Warbeck looked a lot like Edward IV, like their father. So it's plausible, and without a body to confirm or deny, and him having the look and being the right age, there are people that believe him, and he garners support. In fact, he gets support from the Irish, from the Scottish, and from Cornwall. He amasses enough support that he's able to launch 2 rebellions.
Okay, and so let me pause you here and make a point, which is, first of all, it's Henry VII that I'm thinking of, not the 8th. Thank you. And I'm assuming that's correct. But I don't know my Henrys from one to the other. But anyway, so this is the point, is that Perkin Warbeck looks the part, and there's enough people who want that person to exist, and that is what creates this opening. And similarly, Rhaegar has a good reputation. Robert's reputation was going downhill, and now Cersei and Joffrey have really sullied the reputation of the Baratheon dynasty, and there will be a lot of people who would love it if Rhaegar's son was a well-groomed candidate for the throne in the prime of his youth. That would be awesome. And so that is the lie that Varys is conjuring up, Varys and Illyrio, that they're mummering up. And just like Perkin Warbeck, we should expect, fAegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar, to get a lot of support. And that's where it comes in, like Darkstar and his Kingsguard, just like Arthur Dayne, and maybe Orain Waters, and what's his name, Edric Storm as a Orys Baratheon, and various other things. So, we could not Orys. What am I saying? I'm sorry, I mixed that up. That's a different parallel. What's the other? We uncovered a couple potential Rhaegar fAegon parallels besides Darkstar and Orain Waters.
So Edric Storm. But that's going more to the Aegon. That's going more back to Aegon, and Aegon the Conqueror parallel, is Edric Storm being his Orys Baratheon, and sort of them like fixing the rift between House Targaryen and House Baratheon. Then there's also Arianne Martell. She's Ratchet Elia to fAegon's Rhaegar. And then there's
Did you make that up, Tim? Ratchet Elia?
I've been calling her Ratchet Elia for years.
That's good. Somebody make that a meme.
And then there's Ilaria Sand, who's a horse girl. She's playing a Lyanna Stark type, and might be someone who throws a wrench into Doran's plans because he's trying to marry fAegon to Arianne, but if Arianne goes for her cousin, Ilaria Sand, a bastard daughter of Oberyn, that throws a whole wrench in. And then, of course, there's all the other marriage proposals people throwing out there. There are some who think that Littlefinger might try and scheme his way into this and put Sansa forward as a candidate.
I do think that's going to happen. I totally do think that's going to happen. I think that is going to be a very interesting way to turn Sansa's plot back into the main story. Real quick, isn't it said that Arbor Gold is always connected to lies? Bagri Padilla points out. I believe that somebody has tracked that out, and that is correct. So if the Tanner sold his son for a jug of Arbor Gold, we can assume that didn't happen. Yeah, I think that is right. Kelly Johnson, real quick with a PayPal. Will the second dance George has foreshadowed be between Dany and fAegon? Yes, absolutely. I do think so. People might try to pit Jon and Dany against each other, but I think we're going to be out of time. By the time that Jon and Dany are interacting, it's going to be long nighttime. So the dragon civil war will be fAegon and Dany. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
And then Kelly Johnson, another question: will fAegon be alive to take place in the War for the Dawn? Already be toast. I think he'll literally be toast myself. Toasty.
Oh, so there is a moment when Tyrion is staying with Illyrio at his manse before they get on the baggage train. They're having dinner together, and Illyrio, just wants to open a bottle of wine for dinner, and Tyrion notes he has all these vintages, and he notes that there's one from a shy, but to his comfort, Illyrio instead opens a bottle of Arbor Gold.
Comforting lies.
Comforting lies, and not opening the bottle from a shy.
Right, which is Dany and her dragons. Nice. And yes, that was a Mortal Kombat Scorpion Toasty reference. Very good. Okay, so of course, Trystane Truefire is backed by Sir Perkin the Flea. So a very obvious, that's George hanging the lampshade on it, basically saying, this is my Perkin Warbeck character. He doesn't name Trystane Truefire Perkin, but he gives him a supporter, Perkin the Flea, right?
Yeah. And that's how, so fAegon is more like Trystane. He's old enough to know better. So when Perkin the Flea is championing Trystane Truefire as the natural son of Viserys, Trystane's old enough to know, that's not true. But he goes through with it anyway. fAegon, however, and this is a question I posed, is how much does fAegon truly know about himself? Because it seems like he's been raised to believe his own hype, which is what Varys says to Kevin Lannister in the epilogue of Dance with Dragons. So the line from, I have the line from there. So Aegon, for a moment he did not understand. Then he remembered. A babe swaddled in a crimson cloak, the cloth stained with his blood and brains. It's near the end. Dead. He's dead. No. The eunuch's voice seemed deeper. He is here. Aegon has been shaped for rule since before he could walk. He has been trained in arms, as befits a knight to be, but that was not the end of his education. He reads and writes. He speaks several tongues. He has studied history and law and poetry. A septa has instructed him in the mysteries of the faith since he was old enough to understand them. He has lived with fisherfolk, worked with his hands, swum in rivers and mended nets, and learned to wash his own clothes at need. He can fish and cook and bind up a wound. He knows what it is like to be hungry, to be hunted, to be afraid. Tommen has been taught that kingship is his right. Aegon knows that kingship is his duty, that a king must put his people first and live and rule for them. So for Varys, fAegon is like his pet project, a kid who has been raised to know what it's like more for the common people. And that actually gives him a lot of egg parallels, Dunk and Egg. The difference, though, is that fAegon isn't really roughing it, the way that Egg is with Dunk, because he has a crew of people looking out for him. He's camping, but he's camping in a van. He's not camping in a tent the way Egg and Dunk are.
Yeah, Bear Grylls is only a walkie-talkie call away. No, but for real. So there's so much here. First of all, this is like a campaign ad for fAegon. It's like you could I approve this message could go at the end, right? But you're right. This is very much like Varys has read the story of Egg, the Dunk and Egg, and he's sort of tried to recreate it, he and Illyrio. And to some extent, this is true. He has lived with fisherfolk. He has done all these things. This is not bad. Like for a royal child, you can't really make them homeless. I mean, Dany's the real deal. I guess there's Okay, there's degrees of this actually, because Maekar did give egg to Dunk and like, yeah, just take him on the road and treat him like a squire. Sure, I guess we'll give that a shot. Dany is actually homeless, and then here we have a more managed version of what Maekar did with egg. Because Maekar gave egg to Dunk and let him roll.
Yeah.
You know,
but
these
also,
fisher folk are probably Yandri and Ysilla. However, yeah, Aegon is under a lot more management than Egg was.
But the thing is, like, Maekar also gave Egg the boot, and that is the royal sigil, so that when
True.
Dunk and Egg, if they ever really do get into real trouble, he can bust like what happens in the Mystery Knight. Egg can break that out, show that, no, I'm a prince of the Targaryen line, and that's like their get out of jail free card. Dany has nothing like that. fAegon has people overseeing him to keep him from ever needing something like that. That's why Dany's the true egg that hatches.
Right, and that's super important. Like George showing us that ultimately the most just potential candidate for the throne, which is what Dany is, like, she is a descendant of a royal line who has had all the royalties stripped away. And that's what it takes to get somebody who's a real revolutionary. Dany doesn't hesitate to put everything on the line to spark revolution because she kind of has nothing to lose in a sense. That's where it's like her mentality anyway comes from that place. So, interestingly, this last line, Tommen has been taught that kingship is his right. However, Aegon knows that kingship is his duty. A king must put his people first. So just like Dany telling us, you know, why do the gods make kings and queens if not to protect those who can't protect themselves? George is there communicating to us the essence of the duty of anyone in power, which is to put your own needs second and prioritize the well-being of the people you're in charge of. It's not rocket science. It's basic morality, but it's very important to sorting out the different characters in the story. And so Varys is mouthing, he's saying the right thing here. And if fAegon really does understand this, then good. But we've seen some cracks, Tim.
Exactly.
We've seen some signs that maybe not all of these lessons have taken hold the way that one would wish.
Yeah. And a good part of the blame we can place on that is from Tyrion, because Tyrion is the one who starts putting ideas in fAegon's head. And Jon Con will note that when he says, like, young Griff was manageable, but this Prince Aegon Targaryen is not manageable. But he starts becoming like that after spending time with Tyrion. Tyrion really became... Because up until the point that they take Tyrion into their whole little baggage train, he has been pretty malleable. He's been following Jon Con and following Halden Halfmaester and Septa Lemore. Mm-hmm. And when we meet him, he seems like a pretty genuinely, nice kid. Which is what, and that's something we can say about Tommen. But Tommen also has his moments, like his whole "I will ban beats" thing, and that's a kid. But we write that off as, well, this is a kid being a kid. When Aegon has like these moments, like, pick that up, dwarf. You also got to remember though, well, he's 16, and so he is going to have a little bit of immaturity of that, especially if he's 16 thinking that he's a prince. But Tyrion's the one that's really putting the ideas in his head about, no, don't go to Dany. Don't go crawling on her knees. Go do it yourself. And that's when Aegon breaks away from the plan, and he ruins Varys's and Illyrio's plan. And that's what's got the Golden Company up in such a roar. And that's why we get that line when, because George uses Illyrio as a stand-in for himself when he says the fat man's plans keep changing. That's George making fun of himself.
It's true. It's true. Okay, so I think I want to push back a little bit. I was just trying to figure out how to say this. I will agree that Tyrion gave him a little spark of inspiration, but he was planting a seed in fertile soil there. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, this problem happens several times whenever there's a regency. Like you're grooming somebody to be king, but you want them to obey you. But that's not, the king doesn't obey, the king gives orders. So at some point, okay, the pupil must become the king. And when that happens, everybody is a little uncomfortable. We saw that on House of the Dragon with Alicent's son Aegon, okay? He doesn't want to be king, and they're having to chase him down and pull him out of the gambling dens and stuff and being like, do your job, do your job. His brother's telling him, I wish it was me. I would take this seriously. But once they finally put the crown on his head and they put him in front of the crowd and he raises the sword and he hears the cheer, he's like, oh, I am king now. And you can see him get into it. And all of a sudden, Otto Hightower and Alicent are like, what do we do? It's like, well, you made a king. You just made a king out of a 16-year-old who was showing you a lot of signs that maybe he still had some growing up to do, as most 16-year-olds do, Tim. And so you see this with Jaehaerys. Jaehaerys turned out well, but still he made everybody uncomfortable when he decided to finally say, okay, you want me to be king? Well, I'm king. I'm in charge. You listen to me now. And he's like, well, but do what we say. Like, no, I'm king. This is what you wanted.
Yep.
So
and
I think there's some of that with fAegon too. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, and it's what happens with Aegon III. We see his Fire and Blood ends with his regency, and the very ending is his 16th name day. And what does he do? He goes in and he fires the whole small council and says, there will be no royal procession. I'm king now. You all go home. You're fired. And that's the end of the book. And that's the thing. Like, yeah,
it's true.
Because we're basing this, like, a lot of what I'm pulling from an old essay I wrote called The fAegon Connection, a parallel of kings, princes, and pretenders. It's an old Reddit essay that I wrote 2 years ago before I started streaming. And I noted this, like, fAegon has a number of connections to a lot of Targaryen kings, but all 5 Aegons especially. And you just pointed out, like, the Aegon II, and then here's the Aegon III. There's Aegon the Conqueror, there's Aegon the IV, and Aegon the V. Like, he has connections to all of them, and that's what makes him such an interesting character. He literally is like almost the entirety of Targaryen history rolled up into one person, and he's probably not even a Targaryen.
Which gets you back to the whole Aegon was infertile idea, and that neither Maegor or Aenys were Aegon's children. So, which I love that theory. Lunk the Lunk. If the fAegon plot hinges on idealized versions of what Rhaegar's rule could have been, and exploiting that to get support. Oh, this is your 13th month of Squisher. I think that's what he's trying to say at the end there. Okay, yeah. It's true. Then that's why I said, like, this lie that Varys has wrapped up here is pretty tasty. You want it. Yeah, he's studied history and law, and he's been schooled in the different, religions. He speaks different languages, and he can make his own clothes, and he was, he fishes and makes nets and all this stuff, and he knows about duty. It's like, this sounds a lot better than what we got. But yeah, there's chinks in the armor potentially. So I'm curious if George is going to show us like enough character flaws with fAegon so that when Dany or Drogon or just the war kills him, which it probably will, how are we going to feel about it? Are we going to be like, yeah, he was another Joffrey in the making, fuck him? Or are we going to be like, this is really, really tragic, and he was just a 16-year-old kid who pretty much got chewed up by the Game of Thrones? How do you think that's going to feel?
I think we are going to feel like there was some lost potential. And that is why, I think that's why George made fAegon to be a parallel of so many kings, but both the good and the bad. It's one to prove that, obviously, nobody's perfect. And as much as and even with all the planning in the world, which Varys has shown he's very good at, it's never there's always going to be your variables thrown in, things that because you can never really plan for human nature. You can't plan for Tyrion whispering things into his ear. You can't plan on fAegon having whenever his own ideas come. All you can do is do the best you can and hope that it works out well. But obviously there are stones thrown in the way, and that's what we're seeing. The path is never clear. And fAegon has diverted from the road that Varys had set him down. And Illyrio, for his part, has also been flip-flopping, and that's what we get when the guys from the Golden Company are complaining, when they say, like, well, first, he has Viserys, he has Dany marched off, and he has Dany married off to Khal Drogo, but now she's out, screwing around in Slaver's Bay. Then we're supposed to follow Aegon, and he's supposed to go out there and propose his marriage. Now he's heading to Storm's End. It's like all the plans keep changing and nobody knows what's going on. You're muted. Mute it.
And I will just point out, I was trying to say that that's actually, people need to settle down about that. Like, plans have to change. They have to be adaptable. No plan survives the first 5 minutes on the battlefield, as is famously said. So, like, that's not necessarily bad, but it does indicate, like, the treacherous nature of trying to manipulate the whole world. It's a very hubristic thing to try to do. It's not easy. It doesn't, everybody, the pieces have their own minds, as Tyrion says.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, these games of 5D chess that they're playing, but yeah, the pawns have their own minds. It's why Doran Martell will fail, because he plans things out, but he never makes a move. Varys is making moves, but he's still treating people as game pieces and not accounting for individuality. And
so the thing I wanted to point out is basically. God, it just flew right out of my head. Man, my brain. Oh, it's right there. Oh, yes. Okay, I got it. Whew. Brain cell recovered. Sorry, just add a pinwheel. Just picture a little spinning pinwheel on my forehead. The Mummer's Dragon. There's a line in there. It's a Mummer's Dragon greeted by cheering crowds. Okay, now, this is partly the whole context in which you see the cloth dragon. It's in a parade. Like, think of Chinese New Year. I think that was George's inspiration. There's a lot of dragons in the world, so don't shoot me. But the one I think of is Chinese New Year. I live in San Francisco, so I see it every year. And they have the same, big cloth dragon. Everybody's seen pictures of it. But the idea that, like, fAegon is a Mummer's Dragon going to be, greeted by a cheering crowd, that tells me not only will he have a lot of supporters, he'll probably do a good job. Well, he, meaning the fAegon conglomerate that takes over King's Landing, will probably do a better job of ruling than Cersei, at least at first. Because this is just, it makes the story more interesting if Dany comes back and instead of Cersei, the unjust ruler who's ripe to be overthrown, it's fAegon who's actually doing an okay job, and he's a Targaryen, so why do we need Dany? She's, a Targaryen that wants to restore justice. Well, fAegon already did that. And this is going to create an interesting conflict. So it's like, he's a lie, but should we really slay that lie? So that's why I'm wondering, like, will George show us that, even though he's doing well at first, he probably would have been a bad king had he been allowed to live. I'm just really curious where we'll feel about his character if and when he dies,
Well, here's the thing. So there's that line from Jorah when Dany's talking about how Viserys says, like, there are people who still sow dragons and pray by their candles for the return of their king. And Jorah says, the small folk don't care who sits the Iron Throne. The small folk want peace, they want healthy children, and they want a summer without end. And so it's the lords, it's the high lords who are the ones who are putting all of this emphasis on names and titles and ranks and holdings and all of that. The small folk don't care as long as they're left alone. and they never are. That's the line. So, and the other thing is that if like maybe fAegon won't be as fantastic a king as like your Jaehaerys the Conciliator, but the other thing is that the bar has been set so low, right? That if he comes offering people bologna sandwiches, they're going to think it's filet mignon. Like, that's where we're at. fAegon doesn't have to do much to be popular at the moment. He just needs to be better than Cersei. Muted again. You're muted again.
You're totally right. The bar is very low. And here maybe is a good place to talk about the Jon Con Grayscale element. Because it could be that part of the reason that we'll be like, yeah, fAegon needs to be overthrown is also because of Jon Con, who is a ticking time bomb in so many ways. He's got Grayscale, and he's got a lot of rage. And so, you know, the foreshadowing potentially is Alan Cockshaw, who is a supporter of John the Fiddler, another Blackfyre would-be king with a lot of parallels to fAegon. Alan Cockshaw gets thrown into a well, and he's fed a stone, okay, which is kind of like a symbolic way of catching Grayscale. You're being fed the stone, diseased, you turn into stone. There's some other parallels, but Jon Connington, also Alan Cockshaw is, he's red-haired, isn't he, too?
Yes.
Yeah, so
yeah, he was injured.
Somebody figured out that maybe Jon Connington gets thrown down a well and poisons the water supply at King's Landing. I don't know if that's a reason for Dany to overthrow them, but there's wildfire explosions at play. It could be that Jon Connington passes decrees that are harsh or executes people with harsh justice. You know, how do you think old Jon Con will factor into this?
When we think back to Jon Con, and he's remembering the battle at Gulltown, how he lost Robert Baratheon during the rebellion because he didn't resort to scorched earth tactics the way Tywin would, and he regrets that. So he looks at Tywin thinking, I should have been that. So I do see it. Jon Connington might be more of a firm, will try and place himself as a very firm hand over fAegon the way Tywin was in the beginning. And that's something that fAegon will chafe against. The way that the Mad King chafed against Tywin and started insulting Tywin to the point that Tywin resigned until he got his grandson on the throne and then tried to be a firm hand over Joffrey and then Tommen. That's probably what Jon Con's going to do with fAegon. But fAegon is old enough. He's older than Joffrey. He's going to be pushing back and resenting that a lot more because he's not at the age where being older than Joffrey, he doesn't need a regency. He's going to look at it the way Aegon II and Aegon III both did, which is, no, I'm king. Young king, but king. Like, you stay in your hand, but stay in your lane. At the end of the day, I have final say.
Yeah, and he's got to show initiative. Like, if Jon Con was thinking about this, like, he should be happy that Aegon wants to lead and is showing initiative. Like, that's good. Him standing up and giving that speech in front of the Gold Company, that was a big moment for him. Like, this is what you told him you wanted him to do, like I was saying. So you get what you asked for, yeah. And this is Jon Connington by Trish Kell. This is Jon Connington by Daniel Clark. So there's the Grayscale hand. Here is, this is Rhaegar and Jon Con at Griffin's Roost, that moment that we hear described. Where Rhaegar's like, yeah, your lands are nice. And Connington's like, you're beautiful. And this is by Has and Hers, the artist. This is a good one here. This is, Morzezka. It's got the counselor, arm over the shoulder. And this is probably the ultimate Jon Con artwork. This is Philippe Hattori. This captures the sort of Lost Lord vibes He's got the griffins, the hair, the wind. Pretty dope. And his cloak is of a red wolf. Interesting symbolism with Jon Connington and fAegon, but we'll have to do that another time. Also, guys, if you're asking questions that have nothing to do with fAegon, I probably won't be able to answer them today. There's a lot to talk about. We're already an hour and a half in, and we've got still plenty to get to. So, Kelly Johnson, I got your PayPals, but those questions that you've sent me are very not having to do with fAegon. I will try to come back and grab those at the end if I can, but I may just have to save those for an open Q&A stream. Okay, so what's next?
Well, I did have the quote that you brought up about Jon Con reminiscing about.
Okay, where do I find that? I remember seeing that in here.
So, yeah, because we're kind of not going in order. So it's I do have the quote. So it's after some contracts are written ink and some. It's part of my trying when I was pulling up the quotes that really cement the Aegon is a Blackfyre type deal. Yeah, so Jon Connington looks upon him. He remembers Rhaegar, but then the quote is, Prince Aegon Targaryen was not near as biddable as the boy Young Griff had been. So that's the point I was getting at, is that after Tyrion has given Aegon the push, he's being a lot more unruly. Not the kid that Jon was traveling with up on the boat for a while, who was a pretty good kid and listened. Now he's got ideas in his head. The better part of an hour had passed before he finally turned up in the solar with Duck at his side. Lord Connington, he said, I like your castle. And then he remembers Rhaegar. Your father's lands are beautiful, he said. His silvery hair was blowing in the wind, and his eyes were a deep purple, darker than this boy's. So that's one of those. Mm-hmm.
It's a funny intentional contrast. The poetry of Rhaegar versus I like your castle. Always makes me laugh.
But then, you follow it up with the line of Rhaegar's eyes were much deeper purple than this boy's eyes are. And it literally is, and just how what I like your castle isn't anything like your father, isn't as big a compliment as your father's lands are beautiful. What we're literally seeing is a pale comparison. And I think that's the point that we're throwing in that line that, your eyes aren't as purple. Yeah. Your eyes aren't as purple as Rhaegar's was. And I mean, in some ways, kind of be like, you aren't as hot as your dad.
It's pretty funny. But more, you've captured the essence of it, though, that everything, fAegon's entire court is going to be this sad imitation of everything, including, Darkstar.
That's why you have the fake Darkstar. That's why Edric Storm and Orain Waters and Arian Martell fit so well into it as these pale comparisons of the better Arthur Dane, the better Oris Baratheon, the better Elia Martell. It's why the Golden Company being the backing. Again, I've said these Westerosi knights who are really from Essos. And then Raleigh Duckfield. Raleigh Duckfield is a discount dunk.
Right.
He really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is another parallel that fAegon shares with a bunch of people with Egg and Aegon III and Bran, which is the young prince and the giant man protector. Egg has Dunk. Aegon III had Sandok the Shadow. Bran has Hodor. But these are guys who, they're not knights, but they possess the qualities that make a knight. Oh, and then Joffrey too, because Joffrey has the Hound. The Hound is not a knight.
So if fAegon does end up getting eaten or burned by a dragon, that would be similar to Egg dying in the flames at Harrenhal trying to hatch a dragon. And we know that Dunk perished with Egg. I wonder if we will see George give us more Summer Hall parallelism with the death of fAegon and Duck. Should that happen? I would guess the answer will be yes.
Yeah. Because Duck has Raleigh Duckfield, even though I called him discount dunk, like he is good though. Like Raleigh Duckfield's a great character. He is a guy you want on your side, and it does show that goodness in fAegon in recognizing that Raleigh has worth, and it's why he becomes his Kingsguard. And it's Jon Con is the one who's like, well, we should probably keep those other slots open. We need to buy favors, and that's the problem, which has become the new problem with the Kingsguard, that it's lost. Just as the Night's Watch has lost sight of its original goal and is now just this penal colony rather than the respected organization that it should be.
Yeah.
Slots on the Kingsguard are handed out as political favors. They're bargaining chips. They're no longer being given to the best of the best who have the king's interest in mind. That's how we end up with Meryn Trant.
And we saw Visenya and Aegon debate this exact thing when they made the Kingsguard about who should be in there. Should they be the sons of great houses? Like, no, they should be badass killers who are loyal to you. So basically, fAegon has the right idea by naming Duck. Go ahead.
Yeah. And we see that cemented again, like House of the Dragon, when Rhaenyra names Criston Cole, and they're like, well, no, we have all the other big houses, and then she has to say, well, no, it should go. The slot should go to the person who's best designated, who's best equipped to have it, even no matter how low of birth they are. So yeah, so like again, like that's why fAegon needs both a mix of good and bad qualities to show him as a flawed character, and that's all we can really hope for from fAegon, is that he'll just do his best. And that's probably going to be the thing that rallies support, is even if he isn't the perfect king, the fact that he actually tries and is putting his best foot forward, that's going to be, again, like that's going to be enough to win the people over when the bar is set so low the way it is now.
Yeah, and just again, to if there's any show only people still watching the stream here, this is going to be high drama between Dany and fAegon. Like, for a while, Dany will wonder if this is really her brother's son, really her nephew. She's dreamed of finding family. So this is going to be something that comes into play when she hears about Jon and fAegon both. These are lost. Oh, you have family alive. Like, in the show did a really cheap version of this. Dany's only reaction to Jon's Targaryen heritage was just to immediately consider him a threat. This is not the character in the books. In the books, Dany thinks a lot about family, and the degree to which she tries to forgive and give grace to Viserys, despite him physically and emotionally abusing her, shows you like how bad she wants family. Okay, so the idea that fAegon might be her nephew is really going to pull at her, and then even if it's exposed as a lie, that will pull at her too. So, like, these are a lot of plot beats here that the show missed that we're going to get in the next book, probably. It depends on how far Dany's plot goes and wins, if she confronts fAegon or not by the end of the next book. I think yes. Because we got to have... I think that the Long Night should fall at the end of the next book. And so Dany's got to get to Westeros before that happens. Because you don't want to sail in the dark. That's hard. You can't see the stars. It's true. Let's see. So you can use a sunstone, but I don't know. It might be too cloudy for that even. So let's see here. Oh, the other thing about Jon Con, in the Undying Vision, it talks about a stone beast. Can we read that line again? The shadow fire. Let's see. Where is that? A cloth dragon swayed on poles amidst a cheering crowd. From a smoking tower, a great stone beast took wing, breathing shadow fire. So this is the most open to interpretation line. The first part definitely is fAegon and Varys, Mummer's dragon. But a smoking tower could be freaking any tower. Lots of towers, lots of cities going to be catching on fire. It could be, obviously this could be a Euron thing. The top of the high tower could be where he calls the dragon to him. So a stone beast taking wing. That could be Euron's ensorcelled dragon. The shadow fire could refer to Drogon's Blackfyre. It could occur to if Euron, his capturing of a dragon involves him transforming it or whiting it somehow. But I tend to think that the main interpretation of this is another fAegon meaning, and that the stone beast is Jon Connington because of his grayscale, and that the breathing shadow fire is a reference to the Blackfyre rebellion spreading around Westeros, but it's also going to be spreading this grayscale that comes from Jon. He's a beast because he's going to be spreading this disease. Also, he's a griffin, which is a beast.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because a griffin is a beast. A griffin takes wing. But if you have a stone griffin, that would be a gargoyle. And there have been the gargoyle. We get the comparisons of gargoyles to dragons at Dragonstone. So yeah, I think the gargoyle is a stand-in for like a lesser dragon, the way the Blackfyre would be a lesser dragon in view to a Targaryen.
So the only thing then is, what's the smoking tower from which the Blackfyre rebellion or Jon Connington takes wing? Where's the tower come into it?
That could be, well, in the show, it is Cersei who blows up the Sept of Baelor with the wildfire.
Oh.
But maybe in the books, it's going to be Jon Con who blows up the Sept with wildfire.
I almost
doing
see
Tywin scorched earth tactics.
I can almost see Jon Con and Cersei like competing with each other for who can make the bigger atrocity. Like they both have foreshadowing of playing with wildfire and blowing and destroying King's Landing. I really do think Cersei is going to blow up something with wildfire. But that will be tied to fAegon taking the city from her, probably, as opposed to the trial by combat. That's what I think is different. She's not going to massacre a bunch of people and blow up the Sept of Baelor to get out of the trial of combat. She's got Gregor for that. I think that the wildfire stuff will be tied to Jon Con taking the city. Jon Con and fAegon taking the city from her, either trying to or successfully doing so. So yes, there could be lots of atrocities, and perhaps it has to do with the Tower of the Red Keep or a tower. The Sept of Baelor has 7 towers. So yeah, I think that's probably it. It's some sort of destruction of King's Landing type thing.
Yeah, because one of the other things that Dan and Dave did was they cut characters yet kept their story beats and then just transferred them over to other characters. So so we don't get Book Euron. We get a guy who calls himself Euron, but he seems to be doing more of Victarion storyline, even though we never got Vic. So I do think, so there is the idea that maybe this was supposed to be a Jon Con storyline, and they didn't use Jon Con, but they liked the story beat enough that they were like, oh, well, we'll still use that. We'll just apply it to a character that we do have on the show.
And you're talking about the bells here.
Yeah.
You sort of skipped that. Go back and explain what you mean.
Oh, so the bells, Dany going crazy when she hears the bells. That's probably going to be that. Like, no, that's not Dany's moment. That's going to be a Jon Con moment, hearing the bells when the grayscale he'll have the grayscale will be messing up his mind, and he'll have PTSD flashbacks to Gulltown and the bells ringing and him losing Robert, and he's gonna fall back on, I need to be like Tywin. What would Tywin do? Oh, Tywin would just burn everything.
And then the other thing is it possible Jon Con will learn that Varys has deceived him, and that fAegon is not Rhaegar's son, and that this entire thing, him destroying his identity, letting everyone think he's lost to drunkenness, all for a lie, not really Rhaegar's. Because remember, Jon Connington's investment in this is very personal. He is in love with Rhaegar. He feels like he failed the father, and he will not fail the son. If fAegon is not Rhaegar's son, Jon Con's world will crumble. Now, they do. Jon Con has kind of raised fAegon, so they do have their own bond that's real, that will still be there, but the underpinnings of it will be undone, and so this might cause at least a crisis of identity and what are we really doing here. I'm starting a war to put Rhaegar's son on the throne, and it's not even Rhaegar's son. So, like, yeah, this could definitely put him close to the edge. I could see him murdering Varys. How about that? Varys dies at the hands, angry Jon Con strangling him. Like, that makes a lot of sense. I just caught a vision right there.
Well, one thing that I've thought about, too, is because I was referring to Jon Con as, like, the firm hand for fAegon. But the thing is...
A firm hand? Is that a Grayscale joke, Tim?
You know, that actually wasn't where I was going with it, but it does. Oh, man, that just shows George Lucas. But no, what I was getting at, though, is that fAegon has not officially named his hand. Jon Con thinking that he's going to be handed the king, that's an assumption that he has made. And you know what happens when you assume things. But when Tyrion is talking with Illyrio about what is, and he's trying to size up what Illyrio has to gain in all of this, and Illyrio's like, well, we all, we all have our friends and debts of affection to pay, and Tyrion's like, no, there's something in it for you. And the question is like, okay, what is Illyrio going to gain? What does Illyrio have to gain from putting fAegon on the throne? We know that he's Varys' pet project. We know what Varys wants. Varys and his whole for the realm thing. But Illyrio's not a man who cares about what's good for the people at large. He's a Pentoshi magister. He has slaves. He doesn't care
He's a
about
bloody
Westeros.
cheesemonger.
Yeah, he doesn't care about Westerosi values. That means that there has to be something for him to gain in all of this. Now, it could be one option is that fAegon, on top of being a Blackfyre, is also Illyrio's son. But there's also the position that Illyrio could be given when fAegon takes the throne. Okay. Now, when we think...
Oh, sorry, go ahead. And then I want to cut him. Go ahead and finish your thought.
Okay, so in the very beginning, when we first meet Dany and Viserys, and Dany is questioning Viserys on why is Illyrio being so nice to us? Why is he putting us up? And Viserys is like, well, he's no fool. He's going to remember his friends. He'll know that when I claim my throne, I'll remember my friends. And the idea was that Viserys was going to name Illyrio as his master of coin. And now that's a position that might still be true with fAegon. Illyrio would be a good master of coin. He's a magister. He's a money man. And it gives another Jaehaerys connection because Jaehaerys the Conciliator, his master of coin was a Pentoshi man by the name of Rhaego Draws.
Oh, right.
Rhaego Draws was a Pentoshi man who came from nothing, who became the richest man of Pentos, but was still snubbed by the Pentoshi aristocracy. So he goes to King's Landing and becomes Master of Coin. What is Illyrio? Illyrio is a sellsword who comes from nothing, becomes the richest man in Pentos, but he is snubbed by the Pentoshi aristocracy after he takes a Lyseni sex worker to wife.
Right.
So Illyrio is a lot like Rhaego Draws.
Right.
But Master of Coin is an option, but Hand of the King is an even better option.
Now, Rhaego Draws meets a very violent end. Doesn't he get like torn apart by the people or the mob or something?
Yeah, the Lord of Air. Yeah, he becomes the Lord of Air. And, what? It's been so long since I've read that section of Fire and Blood. Let's look. What happened to Rhaego Draws?
Along the lines of Jon Con, like, strangling Varys. Like, if Illyrio shows his face in King's Landing, like, it might not go well for him. Might not go well for him. And while you look that up, I will point out that this will be the time to talk about Sarah and who Sarah is, and getting back to fAegon's identity and why the rest of the picture that makes us feel pretty good about him being a Blackfyre at the least, and a Bright Flame possibly.
Okay, so Rhaego Draws. It's during there's a epidemic, the shivers going around, and he is being carried on his palanquin through the streets of Flea Bottom, and he gets attacked by a starving mob.
So Illyrio the cheesemonger, you could
Yeah,
see.
yeah. So the cheese man getting ripped apart by hungry people. That would be a fitting end.
So Alicia Campos, could fAegon be a descendant of Sarah Targaryen? Perfect segue, Alicia. Oh, chef's kiss. Jaehaerys' daughter who went off to Essos and became a courtesan. Or maybe somewhere along the line, her line merged with the Blackfyre line. Illyrio's wife's name could be a hint. So I think what this is a parallel. Sarah Targaryen becoming a courtesan is a clue that the Sarah that Illyrio married is of the blood of the dragon. Is that how you interpret that, Tim?
Yeah, because Illyrio's wife is also named Sarah. It's just spelled a slightly different way. I think like 2 letters are switched around.
Right.
But aside from that, that's the only difference between her name and Sarah Targaryen, daughter of Jaehaerys, who becomes a Lyseni sex worker and then ends up, I think, in Volant, or she marries a. I know she ends up having 3 sons by very big, a lot of big wigs in the Free Cities. I know one's like a Tyroshi Archon is the father of one of her kids.
So what if the Pisswater Prince is true, but descended from Sarah Targaryen? It's like, that's how you get a nobody kid. And the historical parallel will be the daughter of a sex worker.
Yeah.
It's like, so he's the Pisswater Prince, but he's actually a Targaryen and no one realizes it. That would just be way confusing. Okay, that's probably not it. But yeah, I think... Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, in order for the Blackfyre line to keep going in Essos, 100 years after the first Daemon Blackfyre's death, it would mean that they're having people with some kind of Targaryen blood or some kind of Valyrian ancestry to keep having children with in order to continue the line. Now, we get the line from Illyrio that the male line of Blackfyres dies out when Meleys the Monstrous goes down, but there still is the female line. And if female Blackfyres are, if some of these Blackfyres and Essos are these dragon seeds from Sarah Targaryen back in the Jaehaerys the Conciliator days and all the kids she has, and then yeah, so that does give a plausible way for the bloodlines to link back up.
Which gives you the whole idea, like, so yeah, I guess even setting aside the Pisswater Prince thing, right, exactly, like Sarah Targaryen, or Sarah Illyrio's wife, the Lyseni sex worker, who is the female line of Blackfyre. Yeah, exactly. The Blackfyres would have been looking to Lys for people with Valyrian looks during that century. Exactly right. So fAegon could be Blackfyre and Targaryen. And then there's the Bright Flame theory, which would also kind of make him Targaryen, because Aerion's not a bastard.
Mm-hmm. But Aegon did have bastard children, and he did spend time in Lys when Maekar sent him away. Right.
So that is okay. So let's explain the Bright Flame part of it. That is where it begins. Is the idea that Aegon Brightflame went to Lys and had bastard children. And so it's the same principles we were just saying. Like, we now have both Sarah Targaryen's potential descendants running around in Lys. We've also now got Aerion Brightflame descendants running around in Lys. And either one of these two people those two lines could have woven back into Blackfyre in the form of Sarah, a sex worker from Lys that Illyrio marries. That's very clearly the female line of House Blackfyre. Can you go ahead and read this quote right here?
Some contracts are written ink and some in blood. I say no more. I admire your powers of persuasion, Tyrion told Illyrio. How did you convince the Golden Company to take up the cause of our sweet queen when they have spent so much of their history fighting against the Targaryens? Illyrio brushed away the objection as if it were a fly. Black or red, a dragon is still a dragon. When Meleys the Monstrous died upon the Stepstones, it was the end of the male line of House Blackfyre. The cheesemonger smiled through his forked beard. And Daenerys will give the exiles what Bittersteel and the Blackfyres never could. She will take them home. And then However, and I immediately follow this up with a Daenerys line. This is from Daenerys 3, A Dance with Dragons. So Illyrio drops that line. Oh, it doesn't matter. Black or red, dragon. They're going, she's taking them home. But her brother Viserys had, this is the very next, if you scroll down to the very next one. However, you scroll down on yours.
Oh, sorry.
So, however, her brother Viserys had once feasted the captains of the Golden Company in hopes that they might take up his cause. They ate his food and heard his pleas and laughed at him. So, and this is that whole, like, a dragon is still red or black, a dragon is still a dragon, it doesn't matter. No, it absolutely matters, because if all the Golden Company wanted was to go home, then they would have taken Viserys. They would have been more serious about Viserys' offer. Now,
the
that could be...
Blackfyres are going home. The Blackfyres are going home. Okay. That's as high as I can go.
Now, to give the Golden Company some credit, they probably did look at Viserys and were just like, you don't have a chance in hell. And that could have been the reason they denied him. But still, it pokes holes in what Illyrio said.
If they are looking for a ticket home, they could have looked at the orphan Targaryen prince and said, there's our ticket, and could have assumed raising him for as long as they needed. They could have brought him up as a soldier. You know what I mean? Like, they laughed at him. They must have known they had another plan, or at least, the leaders anyway.
So that's the hole in Illyrio's words. And then we have the hole in Varys' words whenever Varys says, like, oh, it's for the realm. Well, if your duty was to the realm, then why have you been doing the shady things you did? Why did you bring Mad King Aerys to the tourney at Harrenhal?
Why doesn't he take Tommen and turn Tommen into a decent king? Why didn't he kill Cersei instead of Kevin? And because that's all you needed to do was get rid of Cersei, and you could have raised Tommen as an okay kid.
Yeah, Tommen is a good kid. He's young. He's malleable. He's shown that he's willing to learn. And that's the way they kind of went with the way the show went when Tywin says, like, Tommen has the disposition to be a good king. Varys could have taken advantage of that. But no, he wants his pet project. That's why, and he kills Kevin Lannister for doing too good of a job.
And that's the whole point of Tommen being written as a pretty good and coachable kid who's too young to really pass judgment on anyway. That's the whole point. It's like Varys, that not being good enough for Varys shows you that he's got personal skin in the game. It's not just for the realm. That's a great point, Tim. That's why we pay you the big bucks.
So I guess that could lead us into the next thing, which is, fake going down. Because so we read that line, which is all the stuff as fAegon as Illyrio's son. And these are all the quotes that really kind of give the impression that might be what's going on. So this is from Tyrion 3. It's when they meet up with the baggage train when we're first introduced to Halden Halfmaester and Raleigh Duckfield. There is a gift for the boy in one of the chests, some candied ginger. He was always fond of it. Illyrio sounded oddly sad. I thought I might continue on to Groy-Handro with you. A farewell feast before you start downriver. And Halden, at this point, Halden waves him off like, sorry, we don't have time for feasts. So then when they're departing, Illyrio calls out to them, good fortune. Tell the boy I am sorry I will not be with him for his wedding. I will rejoin you in Westeros, that I swear, by my sweet Sarah's hands. So there's the difference. So Sarah Targaryen, her name is spelled Seara, whereas this Sarah is Serra. So it's just a one-letter difference. The last that Tyrion Lannister saw of Illyrio Mopatis, the Magister was standing by his litter in his brocade robes, his massive shoulders slumped. As his figure dwindled in the dust, the Lord of Cheese looked almost small. So you get the sense that this is a dad who misses his kid.
Yeah, a dad that misses his kid, and also somebody who used to be a formidable warrior. This goes back to the statue. Describing him as massive and overweight is one thing, but shoulders Massive shoulders, that's not a tummy. Okay? Like, he's got massive shoulders. This is a warrior. And also we see that he's light on his feet. He moves like a dancer. So that statue in the courtyard of Illyrio's mansion that looks like a 16-year-old kid in the prime of youth, like one picture's Michelangelo's David almost in the courtyard. That's young Illyrio, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah,
Almost
because not only was, because we got to remember, before Illyrio became a magister, before he became a rich man, he was a sellsword, and not just a sellsword, he was a bravo. Okay, he would have been lean and lithe. He would have been built like Arya's dancing instructor, the first sword of bravos. Like that. That's young. That's
but
what
bigger,
young Illyrio was.
But bigger. He's like the rare, very large person. Like in the NFL, you get these types sometimes. Like there's a lineman. He's maybe 330 pounds, but his footwork is so good. He almost looks like he's a dancer out there, but he's just a mountain of a man. Like those people exist. That's kind of what Illyrio was. That's how I picture him. In his youth,
tall and nimble,
lean, but with massive shoulders, a large figure. And Aegon is he's pretty tall. Like fAegon, he's described as a tall, lithe youth. Like he looks the part, And this art, by the way, is Elfin Fen. And this is like, this is an interesting picture because it shows him with his Blackfyre banner. And in the background, you can see the Baratheon and Stark banners. So it's almost like he's in Westeros, like, hey, everybody, I'm here. Can I be king now? But it's like, dude, you're Blackfyre. It's very just like, hello, is there a war? Can I be king? Oh, and the art, so Elfin Fen. And then I showed this one earlier. This is Sir Petus. And this is supposed to be Aegon VI in his armor with Blackfyre. I'll go ahead and... There we go. It's pretty wicked armor. And here's the previous one, full size. Let me show you the Dennis Manzev super hunky. Get ready, guys. Ultra hunky fAegon incoming. This is the Young Griff version. This is Dennis Maznev, who draws extra hot, lusty versions of all the Targs and a few of the Starks. It's what he does. This is Young Griff, but with the dye washed out. And yes, I'm wearing a cloth dragon hood. That's the idea. And I've got a red dragon and I've got blue on. Anyways. And let's see here. And then we've got... Oh, he just did 2. Sorry. I thought he did 3. He did 2. This is Young Griff by Syriza. And this is the classic Young Griff by Steamy. Slightly comedic. This one makes me smile. Then we've got Young Griff as, fully decked out as son of Rhaegar Targaryen, but you can see the Gold Company banners in the background with the skulls. This is by Diego Gisbert Lorenz. And I think... Oh, there's one. Oh, that's right. There's one with a weird name. So, Tim, I found this. Let me just show you this real quick. This is Borja Pindado. I've never seen artwork with Euron on the sea stone chair, but here it is.
Yeah, and he did say he's been sitting on it off lately, and it doesn't complain.
So the artist is Dennis Maznev, like that. Yeah. So let's see here. Let's get back to this guy. Okay, let's see here. I got a super chat. Will Euron install a puppet High Septon in Old Town and get control of Faith Militant to fight a war against fAegon and King's Landing? I do think Euron will be crowned in Old Town. I had been saying that for years. That would very much require a puppet High Septon. So yes, and getting control of the Faith Militant to cause trouble in King's Landing sounds like a great idea that Euron would love. Tim, what do you think about that? You could see a rival. You could see the faith in Old Town diverge from the high. What's his name? High Sparrow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like
Especially
Septon Moon did.
Mhm. Yeah, and High Septon, there's been a number of times where High Septons have conveniently died in very mysterious ways beforehand, and then new High Septons who are a lot more amenable to what the current leading figures are saying have been installed in their place. But as for Euron and fAegon, I'm actually going to admit I actually haven't really thought about what Euron and fAegon interactions will be, because I actually don't think they will meet. I think Euron is going to be his own thing. I think they're going to be on opposite ends, because Euron's in Old Town, whereas fAegon's heading towards Storm's End, and those are on opposite sides of the continent.
Yeah, I don't think they'll meet directly, but I think the questioner is right to set up these two poles of power that will emerge. I do think if Euron's going to be crowned, then yes, he'll need a puppet High Septon, and then it's like the faith turning back to their potential starry wisdom roots, right? If there's any other starry wisdom factions in Old Town, perhaps they'll support Euron. We'll see some members of the Citadel toppled, some members of the faith toppled, other people take power. And then, I think you'll see the High Sparrow denounce Euron from King's Landing, and maybe that will lead him to champion fAegon, because fAegon's schooled in the faith, and the idea is to be conciliatory with Jon Con and their whole crew, right? They're looking for allies. They're trying to name the sons of High Lords to the King's Guard, build support. So I can see them as the more appealing choice from either Tommen, who could be exposed or is potentially already exposed as a child of incest, and of course Euron and an apostate High Septon. So I like the picture that question paints.
Yeah. I do want to pick up. So someone in the Simon Racine, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they asked, why would Illyrio help both Dany and fAegon? And I got an answer for this one, and this is going back to
That's
War
a huge
of the Roses.
question, yeah.
So Illyrio's plan before Dany went off to Slaver's Bay and before fAegon decided to go off to Storm's End and try and do everything on his own. The plan was marry Dany off to Khal Drogo, and for Illyrio, one, that's buying a favor from Khal Drogo, because he also was trying to keep Drogo's Khalasar from sacking Pentos. So first and foremost, he was saving his own ass, first and foremost. Second, he had no idea those dragon eggs were going to hatch. That was nowhere in the plan. Third, the idea is that Khal Drogo would keep his end of the bargain, sail across the narrow sea with Viserys. And this is where the show did a great job of doing this. The scene where when they added the scene of Robert and Cersei talking about the Dothraki. Well, yeah, we'll hide up in our castles. That works well. But what are the people are going to do? They're going to see their king hiding in his castle while they're getting raped and pillaged by Dothraki. But the Dothraki, for their part, they're going to be fighting in land that they don't know. They're used to fighting on open fields and grasslands. Crossing the sea is new to them. Fighting people in armor, new to them. Hills, mountains. Mm-hmm.
So this is the whole thing, of course. Anybody who knows the history of horse nomads, steppe peoples, the steppe is their highway, and there are certain things that are very much obstacles for them. They often stop at very large rivers or mountain ranges or things like that, because it's just they can't move with the same speed, and they lose a lot of their tactical advantage. So yeah, carry on, but you're exactly right.
Yeah. So the Dothraki are going to have a very hard time in Westeros fighting in this unfamiliar terrain.
They would do well. They're going to do well in little pockets, like here and there, like in the Reach or the Crown Lands, some little flatland areas. They might do okay, but ultimately, I think the point you're leading to is like they'll make the Lords look bad but not really be able to fully conquer Westeros. And so fAegon then would be brought in as the next wave to deliver Westeros from the Dothraki horde, right?
Yeah. So the perception would be that Robert's cowering, the lords are cowering, but then fAegon comes over with the Golden Company, mops up. Oh, and not only that, but this is also being led by a foreign army and the son of the Mad King. So the perceptions on Viserys are also going to be equally as bad for him as they are for Robert. Robert's a coward. Viserys is, well, that's the mad, son of the Mad King. That's Mad Prince, and he's leading foreign savages. So he's not going to win the hearts and minds of people either, which is why Viserys' plan was doomed to fail from the start. It's for the idea. The plan is then for fAegon and the Golden Company, who at least can claim Westerosi lineage, to come in and mop up, and then they could become the heroes. And then finally, when that's done and Khal Drogo is dead, marry Dany and fAegon and reunite the lines of Targaryen and Blackfyre. This has to do with Henry VII, because the reason the Tudor dynasty was able to cement themselves is because, one, the last male of House Lancaster died, and second, Henry married a daughter of House York. So he was able to inherit both claims of Lancaster and York to claim the throne. That's the plan. It's rewriting the War of the Roses.
So let's go back way before that in the plot line. Let's talk about Dany when she's in Karth, or I'd say it's the Market in Vaes Dothrak, when she's got these assassination attempts. They're being ordered from King's Landing. Ser Jorah is informing to Varys about Dany and Drogo's movements. And Varys is ordering a hit on Dany via this wine cellar. But what's happening there? Did Varys alert Jon Connington, or alert Jorah so that he could stop that? Or was that Jorah's decision to interrupt that assassination attempt? I always read that as Jorah's decision.
Well, what happened is, so Varys had to order the hit because he has to, even though he has to keep up appearances, he still needs to make Robert think that he's working for him. Like that's part of the thing. Like this is part of the whole, you got to break some eggs thing. But yeah, he does let Jorah know. But Robert was willing to grant Jorah a pardon if he did the deed. But Jorah decided that he loved Dany more than the idea of getting pardoned and coming home. So that's why he thwarted the assassination attempt.
Because I was thinking that perhaps Varys thinks if Dany's assassinated, that will piss off Drogo and cause him to invade Westeros. But maybe not.
I mean, it's something that would definitely shore up Drogo's. Yeah, because it does. Because that is what happens. Because after that, that's when Drogo really says, like, I will defeat the Iron Men in their stone houses. That's when he does have that moment. So it did help push Drogo into being more about, no, we're gonna do this. We're gonna cross the narrow sea. Yeah. So Varys had to make sure that Drogo holds up his end of the bargain, which is that he's gonna help Viserys. But that's not the end-all, be-all plan. That's a means to an end.
Right. Right. So, because the other question is, like, why would Illyrio and Viserys turn Dany over to Drogo and the Dothraki if keeping her alive was an important part of their plan? Because anything could have happened. She didn't have to turn into the Khaleesi. That's an unlikely outcome, right? The more likely outcome is that she's just a bed slave, essentially, and at some point probably doesn't handle Dothraki culture very well and doesn't, you know what I mean? She could easily die. Khals are overthrown all the time. And so, like, people have always wondered, like, why would they just give her to the Dothraki? I think the answer is, ultimately, fAegon is the one they want to put on the throne, and there are multiple scenarios in which they could take advantage and create a situation where that will happen. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What it was is the Dothraki were supposed to be a false flag operation. That's literally what it's supposed to be. And it was supposed to be a means to make both Robert and Viserys look bad, and then for fAegon to come over and be the hero. And also, like I said, Illyrio was killing two birds with one stone because he was also keeping the Dothraki Khalazar from sacking Pentos. That was also part of it.
Somebody's asking if Varys will betray fAegon at the last second. I don't understand that. Why would that happen? That doesn't make sense to me. Varys is so invested in fAegon, it's not even funny. I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. So, I don't see that.
Yeah, so there was someone saying that Drogo was dead before the assassination attempt, but there were a couple of assassination attempts on Dany. There's the one with the wine merchant and the poisoned wine. That's when Drogo's still alive. Then
That's
later
what I was talking about, yeah.
There's also the one with the weeping man and the manticore and that manticore bug. But
that could be an Associ faction at that point. Trying to kill Dany.
Yeah.
It's just that she has the dragon, she's a target.
Yeah, it's just that there have been numerous attempts on Dany's life, both before and after Drogo's death.
So you want to give us this cool thing about the ginger candy and the edited passage? Because I found this to be really interesting.
Yeah, so from a 2005 reading of Tyrion 2, so because Dance, like when George makes the split, so Feast comes out in 2006, was it? There was a time when George was, because before we got Feast and Dance, it originally was supposed to be one book, but then George realized, oh, I got too much going on, and that's when he makes the split, and we get Feast and Dance. So yeah, Feast came out in 2005, and then we wouldn't get Dance until 2011. But originally there were supposed to be Tyrion chapters and Jon chapters and Dany chapters before George decided it was too big. And in a reading that he did from the original Tyrion 2 chapter, when Illyrio is meeting up with the baggage train, there's a scene where Illyrio gets angry and he tells Halden Halfmaester there are things that he must know. But then Halden eyes Tyrion and he can see that Tyrion's spying and that he's eavesdropping. So he begins to speak in another language. Tyrion cannot tell what it is, but he thinks it might be Volantine. And he catches a few words that sound very close to High Valyrian. And the words he catches are queen, dragon, and sword. So George omits that. When we finally do get Dance and the Tyrion chapters, the chapter has been rewritten and these words are dropped. And that's because George felt that word, just that one word alone, sword, gave away too much. And instead, he replaces it with, we don't know what the oaken chests are filled with, just that Illyrio does mention that one is filled with candy ginger. And he states that that's one of Aegon's favorite treats. And that's what lends more credence to Illyrio is Aegon's son, because how else would you know his favorite candy unless you have like a very close, intimate bond with this kid?
And so there's another piece of this, which is, and I don't know where it is, but somewhere there is a clue that ginger candy refers to the sword Blackfyre. Through the symbolism of something else. And I just don't remember what it is. But the point is that the thing that's in the chests is not ginger candy. I mean, there might be. But the thing that's in there is a sword. It's a dragon sword that will prove that he is... It's going to be one of their major claims to legitimacy. They might have... So, well, no, the crown, the original crown of Aegon the Conqueror is in Dorne. Did it get lost in Dorne? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that'll appear.
I think it might. The Last King. Okay, so this is another parallel. So the last king to wear the crown of Aegon the Conqueror was Daeron the First, the young dragon. And Daeron the First, he's the one who leads a war against Dorne. He decides, okay, we're going to conquer Dorne. We need to reclaim some of this lost glory now that all the dragons are dead. He is killed in Dorne. The Dornish raise a white flag like they surrender, but then they kill him. It's false. It's a betrayal. They kill him, and the crown is lost. Well, Daeron has that he has that famous line of, "You have a dragon. He stands before you." Because everyone's questioning, well, how are we going to take Dorne? We couldn't take it when we had dragons. Right. Now we don't have dragons. fAegon has a line of I am the only dragon when he decides to lead the Golden Company to Storm's End and break off from Dany. They were saying, well, we need Dany, we need her dragons. fAegon says, I am the only dragon you need. That is him mimicking Daeron. Daeron was a young kid, young king who leads a war and dies in it. So that's the fAegon Daeron parallel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Perhaps perhaps Doran Martell has it, and he's been saving it for whenever these pacts that he's been trying to make with the Targaryens come true. So that could be cool.
Yeah.
That's more remote though. The idea that they have Blackfyre is a lot more solid, and that's going to be used as a symbol of his legitimacy. If one thinks about it, it would also be kind of a giveaway that he's a Blackfyre. But they'll probably invent a different story about how they have it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
The ginger candy thing, I might be thinking about blackberries and blackberry wine, which is a Blackfyre clue. But the ginger candy also has some symbolism. I just can't remember what it was. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, without dragons, which was the original plan, Aegon is going to need these heirs of legitimacy. That's what makes Blackfyre so important. And having the crown of Aegon the Conqueror would only add to that. And if fAegon does follow through, and it takes Arya and Martell to bride, if he doesn't screw it up, throw it all away, and have a tryst with Ilaria Sand, then Doran Martell producing the crown of Aegon the Conqueror is something that House Martell has been sitting on all of this time. And that would also help. And again, like we've said, Doran Martell's problem is he waits too long. So the idea of the Martells having kept this crown in their possession for over a century at this point is a total Doran thing to do, to just be sitting on it. You're muted again.
Hard for me to believe it wouldn't have come up when Elia married Rhaegar. So I tend to think that if they have it, it's something they would have had to have found recently. So that's why I said I'm not too sure about that. But the Sword Blackfyre is definitely coming. And that's why this was changed. Like, the clue is that this passage about Queen, Dragon, and Sword was replaced with a line about ginger candy. So, yeah.
And then there is another line where we do find out something else that's in those chests. And this is still in the fAegon as Illyrio's son. Comes right. It's the next quote after the Lord of Cheese looks small.
Oh, I think I have it up here.
Yeah. You're near the end.
Oh, okay.
We scrolled down to the so. It's the one right before. We can just read all these quotes. So his clothing, yeah. This is after they have the run-in, when they're traveling down the River Royne and they have their run-in with the Stone Men and Tyrion falls off the boat. So after they fish him back up, his clothing was still soaked from his involuntary swim, clinging to his arms and legs uncomfortably. Whilst young Griff went off with Septa Lemore to be instructed in the mysteries of the faith, Tyrion stripped off the wet clothes and donned dry ones. One of Illyrio's chests had been packed with a child's clothing, musty but well made. Septa Lemore had slit each garment apart, then sewn them back together, joining half of this half to that to fashion a crude motley. So So, in a way, Tyrion's being dressed like a fool because he's wearing mismatched clothes. He's motley. He's got like a patch face thing going on. But the point is that they're made from a child's clothing, and these child's clothes are also obviously old because they have a musty smell to them. Why would Illyrio pack a chest filled with children's clothing for fAegon? That means that at some point there must have been a child living at his manse. So more evidence of fAegon being Illyrio's son.
But why would they send it? Why do they need it now? Why is it in the chest?
That is the question that I'm not sure about. Unless Illyrio is just sending fAegon things from his childhood to kind of just be like, remember who you are.
Could there be some Targaryen livery that's supposed to be like from when Aegon was a baby or something? Because Tyrion didn't look in the chest. He only knows that there was children's clothes because Lemore produced them. I'm just trying to think, why would they need those clothes? There's no kid now. They don't need to dress a kid in clothing. So why would they have kids' clothes? Like,
I think it might be Illyrio. If Illyrio is prepping for a grandson and would want his custom-made clothing that he had his own son made to go to his grandchild, that'd definitely be something. But still, it's a weird thing. But the fact that there's kids' clothes in the that there was children's clothing packed in the chest and they're old and musty means that Illyrio must have had a kid at some point in time. I don't know why exactly.
I agree with that. I was just going on to like, why do they need it? Karsnark is saying Targ onesies confirmed. I think that's correct. And yes, just real quick, this video that we're making right now, Tim, is the 421st video on my channel. So before we started the stream, there were exactly 420 videos, which means my Grey King video was 420. And that really fits because my original Grey King versus the Sea Dragon, Weirwood Compendium 1, was one of my first real YouTube videos that put me on the map. And it was just really the first big breakthrough after the Moon Meteor stuff. So that's pretty fun. Guys, if you haven't watched the Grey King video, go watch it. And the other thing I want to tell you is that I'm going to have a new video coming out maybe tomorrow afternoon, and if not tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday morning. And I really need y'all to watch it because this has been a slow month, I will just tell you. The YouTube wins that were in our sales have becalmed. And so, and then also I got delayed on making the Ironborn video because I've been having computer problems. So I'm going to have my Bolton flaying theory, which was like 2.5 hours deep in the Stark iceberg stream. I've cut it out, edited it, add art, and a couple extra thoughts. And so my Bolton theory is going to be coming out, like I said, either Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning. Please click it when you see it in your feed. I would really appreciate that. Be a big help. Whenever you see YouTube show it to you, click on that sucker and watch it. That will help me. So appreciate that. If you're not subscribed to Grey Waste Tim's channel, please subscribe to Grey Waste Tim's channel. Check out his videos. He just got monetized, folks, with help of people like you. He got enough views and hours and subscribers and whatever to be monetized. So Grey Waste Tim can now, it's a whole new world, Tim. When you see, when you get that first YouTube check from Google AdSense, it changes your whole, you're going to be motivated to make some more videos is the point.
And that's what I'm hoping to do after the new year, when should be getting some more free time.
Awesome.
But yes, thank you to everyone for that. I do have more ideas. My next video that I want to make is going to be about Staggai and the River Ash.
Yes, bring it to us, Tim. The Squid Rock at the heart of darkness. Where was fAegon when Dany and Viserys were at Illyrio's palace? Probably out on the river with Yandri and Ysilla or something like that. But yes, Varys and Illyrio were sort of juggling, as you will, like mummers do, juggling their Targaryen children. Grey Waste, get money, Tim. Get money. Get money. All right. So where are we next? Illyrio's chess.
Yeah, Illyrio's chess. The next one.
Eyes.
So this is Illyrio talking about his dead wife, a maiden. I know the way of that. Illyrio thrust his right hand up his left sleeve and drew out a silver locket. Inside was a painted likeness of a woman with big blue eyes and pale golden hair streaked by silver. Sarah. I found her in a Lycine pillow house and brought her home to warm my bed. But in the end I wed her, me, whose first wife had been a cousin of the Prince of Pentos. The palace gates were closed to me thereafter, but I did not care. The price was small enough for Sarah. So we coupled that.
So touching. Oh, it's moving, everyone. It's just touching.
But
Illyrio is, very romantic, right?
Yeah. But you look at when we note her features, so silver, golden hair streaked by silver, and the big blue eyes. Now, not all Targaryens have the classic silver and purple. Some of them, their eyes aren't as deep of purple. They can be blue. Some of them, their hair is less silver and more blonde. And then some don't have it at all. Like Duncan, the Prince of Dragonflies, has black hair. Daeron the Drunkard has sandy hair. So the purple eye, silver hair thing is not a given. But again, here
Tim,
we see someone
purple eyes in the real world. Purple eyes are essentially modified blue eyes. As far as how they get to look that way, you should look it up. I can't repeat it to you. It is very interesting science, the eye color stuff. But purple eyes are like George giving the Targaryens eyes that range from blue to purple makes sense. So that's yeah.
But what we do get is we get people whose eyes are blue, but they're like very blue. They're almost purple.
Yeah,
and I think that's what we're
indigo.
supposed to get with Sarah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's also what we're supposed to think with fAegon when Jon Con notes his eyes aren't as dark. Well, yeah, he's not, and that could be a sense that he's Rhaegar's son, but he's also Elia Martell's son. So you can write that off of. Of course, he's not going to have strong Targaryen features. He's not Targaryen on both sides like some Targs were, and that could be why his eyes seem a little more diluted and not the vibrant purple. But then but Illyrio's wife has these big blue eyes and this pale golden hair, so she is someone who has the Targaryen look and could produce a child who also would have something close to these Targaryen features.
And I believe that the description of fAegon's eyes almost exactly matches Egg's. So, just for what it's worth.
Yeah, Egg's eyes are so blue they're almost purple.
And they're large and a couple other things, yeah.
And then the next one, are you...
Is that...
I was just going to read the next quote.
Yeah, can you? I was going to say, Cleo is losing her cool in the other room, so I am going to go and get her and give Goosey a treat and maybe fix my hair a little bit because it's all flattened down, and then I'll be right back. So if you could read this quote and then proceed to give commentary, it will probably take me about 90 seconds.
Sure. Okay, so the next one, this is from Tyrion 2, A Dance with Dragons. Are you quite certain that Daenerys will make good her brother's promises? She will, or she will not. Illyrio bit the egg in half. And I'm sure there's definitely some symbolism in the fact that Illyrio is biting an egg in half. I told you, my little friend, not all that a man does is for gain. Believe as you wish, but even fat old fools like me have friends and debts of affection to repay. Liar, thought Tyrion. There is something in this venture worth more to you than coin or castles. You meet so few men who value friendship over gold these days. So here's Tyrion in his mind is calling bullshit. Like, no, there's something you have to gain from this. You aren't just doing this out of the kindness of your heart. But Illyrio does say, I have debts of affection to repay and friends and all that. And the answer to what's really going on here is that it's probably a mix of both. If fAegon is Illyrio's son, then yeah, that would be a debt of affection. It would be only natural. If you have the chance, I think any father would love to see their kid on the throne. But of course, getting something, if you're able to win with that gambit and get your kid to be king, then obviously there's going to be a lot in it for you. I've said, like, going on Viserys's option that he would have made Illyrio his master of coin, and Illyrio being a Rhaego draws parallel, fAegon might have the same idea in mind for Illyrio. If fAegon takes the throne, name Illyrio as his master of coin, make him his Rhaego draws. This Pentoshi Magister money man, and as we've seen, like, by being the master of coin, you get access to a lot of funds. Like, that's how Littlefinger has been skimming off the top and embezzling. And a man like Illyrio would have a lot to gain from being master of coin. But I also said too, though, that Jon Con thinking he's going to be handed the king is an assumption that he has made. And what might drive Jon Con over the edge is if fAegon names someone else as his hand. Maybe Illyrio, maybe Varys. And that could be the thing that really sets him off.
So great question here from Warham Saltsmoke. Thanks for asking. Why did Illyrio give the eggs to Dany if Jon Con was their bet? Well, they didn't think they were going to hatch. The hatching was a miracle. They hadn't hatched in 160, 70 years. So they are valuable. I think the question still applies, though. Even if they don't think they're going to hatch, there's still symbols of Targaryen legitimacy that they could have made use of. So that could be retconning. Someone did ask, like, how early is fAegon foreshadowed? The answer is book 2. The Mummer's Dragon quote is fAegon foreshadowing in book 2. So he's definitely foreshadowed well before book 5. And all the Blackfyre stuff they start talking about is essentially leading to fAegon. And he's talked about the Blackfyres since the first book, I think, right?
Well, here's where I think the
at Old
problem
Stones,
comes in.
be Cat and Rob at Old Stones.
Yeah, like
Is that in Clash?
Here's where I think
that might be in Clash. I can't remember.
The problem I think comes in is that George had an idea of something he wanted to do, that he plants it very early on in book 1, and that is when Arya is hiding in the Red Keep among the dragon skulls, and she overhears Illyrio and Varys talking, too soon. I think that George definitely wanted to do some kind of pretender to the throne angle because of how much of this is based off of War of the Roses. But he didn't have the Blackfyre mind. He just knew early on he wanted to do some kind of pretender thing, and then the Blackfyre stuff came later. So he planted a seed, but he didn't quite know where that seed was going. It wasn't until years later that seed grew into the Blackfyres. Unfortunately, it seems that also kind of... But since book 1, Dany also gets the dragon egg, that seed growing clashed with the other event happening of Dany being given these dragon eggs. So I think that's where it went.
And I think George could fix this if they produce more dragon eggs when fAegon takes the throne. Be like, oh yeah, we gave Dany 3, but we knew where some were. Because Varys has been in King's Landing for 20 years. He knows about the secret passages under King's Landing that is a secret of Maegor the Cruel. So the idea that Varys may have found some dragon eggs that are in King's Landing that they'll produce, very, very possible. It would make a lot of sense to me and would help explain that incongruity. Because it's something, look, you retcon some stuff as a writer. You retcon a lot of stuff. It's really just a matter of how well can you do it and weave it into the story. Thank you very much, Ian, gifting 5 memberships. Appreciate that.
Ooh, nice, Ian. So another thought I had too is that they might have also believed that the dragon eggs would come back to them if this fAegon Dany marriage happens. Again, both of them need some kind of symbol of legitimacy. For fAegon, that's Blackfyre, and for Dany, that would be the dragon's eggs. Now, if fAegon and Dany married, then the dragon's eggs would come back with them. And they also, another thing they would have to do is, if their plan was for Viserys to invade with Dothraki and fAegon to mop up and and come in and be the big hero, the knight in shining armor, but still marry him off to Dany, then they would also have to clean Dany up, because Dany would be seen as complicit with Viserys. They need a way to dust her off and make her still look presentable to the Westerosi people too.
True.
So
Okay.
having the dragon's eggs, and then having Blackfyre, and then the marriage being rejoining the Blackfyre and Targaryen lines. Here's the sword, here's the dragon eggs, here's your beautiful young king and queen.
And as you pointed out, that's a big part of the historical parallel. Reuniting,
because reuniting the houses by having Henry marry a daughter of House York, whereas House of Lancaster, all of the men, the male line dies out, which is what we're told the Blackfyre line. So yeah, it's very much just a rewriting of the War of the Roses. That was the plan they had in mind. It's just that there's been so many hiccups in that plan.
Yeah, Daggermouth Tony, absolutely. It seems like Illyrio misjudged Dany. He planned to ship her off to die or be removed from the chessboard so him and Varys could do their Blackfyre thing. I kind of still lean more towards that side, Tim. I think that the unification idea is interesting, and I want to give it more thought. But in general, I have to, like I said earlier, they were at least willing to risk that Dany might die out there and still think that they could use that. But
yeah, I think it could go either way, because a plan this complex, really a plan this convoluted. Let's be honest. It's a convoluted plan. You need to account for multiple options. So I think they needed to account for, well, either she dies, in which case that's good for us, or if she lives, well, then how do we make that work? Oh, marry them. So I think that's like they needed to account for both options, for her to live or for her to die.
It kind of mimics George's writing style, the Gardner writing style. If he, wrote Varys and Illyrio's plan to have options, that kind of makes sense. Okay, cool. So let's see here.
So then the next are the bullet points where I'm like really hammering this home. So this is like really like when we start piecing all the evidence. Okay, so
and this is important because people are still wondering, well, what if he's a Pisswater Prince? He could still be a Mummer's Dragon. But go ahead and run through this. Yeah.
So Illyrio has hired the Golden Company, famed Blackfyre supporters, and that's why we get that line from Tyrion, like, how'd you convince the Golden Company who are so famous for fighting against Targaryens? They've broken a contract with Myr, and that's something that they have never done in history. So that's the thing. The thing that makes the Golden Company such a renowned free company is the fact that that they never break contract. Along with that whole beneath the gold, the bitter steel, they also have their second slogan, our word is good as gold. Yet here, they've broken the contract. Almost 100 years in formation, they've never done that. And they do it to take up and fighting for Myr, even though it's stupid and fruitless because of these endless wars between Lys, Myr, and Tyrosh over the disputed lands, it's still something that's guaranteed payment. But they give it up to follow this kid. A fact that Illyrio dismisses with the written ink, written blood, and red or black dragon lines. Illyrio notes that the male line of Blackfyres has died out, not the entire line. His second wife, who he found in a Lycene pillow house, and Lys is famous for having the most classic Valyrian-looking citizens.
Okay.
She has... yeah.
Sorry, just go back. We'll read this point again, but go back. That I just want to stress, when Illyrio's like, oh, the male line died out, like, this is almost something that George should have changed for being too obvious. Like, the male line died out. He's basically saying, well, the female line is still alive. How the fuck would he know that?
Yeah, how would he know that unless he has intimate knowledge of this?
But carry on.
Yeah, so his second wife, who has these Valyrian looks, she's found in Lys, which is where the most classic Valyrians looking are. And that's also because Lys is famous for its pillow houses, its brothels. Tyrion notes that fAegon dyeing his hair blue conceals his eyes by making them look more blue than purple. And then there's this line: the blue hair makes your eyes seem blue. That's good. And the tale of how you color it in honor of your dead Tyroshi mother was so touching it almost made me cry. But Jon Con notes that Rhaegar's eyes were a deeper purple. So he's got these very blue eyes. So blue, they're almost purple. Not quite there, but enough that people would see it. And that's why the blue hair helps distract from how dark blue his eyes are. But the blue hair, so when Tyrion first meets them, and they're going by the names Griff and Young Griff, his story is that his mother was a woman from Tyrosh who had died, and he dyes his hair blue to honor her. Daemon Blackfyre, the first Daemon, his wife was Rohan of Tyrosh. She was the mother of his children. Daemon Blackfyre had 7 sons and 2 daughters. So 9, this woman gave birth to 9 kids, so she's a trooper. But still, she is the mother of Blackfyre. So fAegon dyeing his hair blue in honor of his mother being Tyroshi, and the actual mother of Blackfyres being Tyroshi. You see the dots, so you can see, you just connect them.
And this is the kind of elegant, layered parallel clue that we have come to know George for. Like, this is how you figure out Ice and Fire, is by tuning into stuff like this. So I think I really liked that one, the Tyroshi reference. It's really good.
And then the next point I bring up after this is then, it also makes sense for fAegon to be a Blackfyre, because if fAegon's story wasn't going in the Blackfyre direction, then why would we have so many Blackfyre references in Feast with characters like Brienne who are not tied into it? George would not put, and also even with the Dunk and Egg stories themselves, I don't think George would put this much stock into Blackfyre rebellions if it wasn't going somewhere. There has to be some kind of payoff.
This is another great point. Like, you can step back from this whole thing and say, how much time have we spent talking about the goddamn Blackfyres? Like, it's got to be, there has to be a payoff in the plot. They are not just there to be interesting history. Like, the 6th Blackfyre rebellion is coming. It's got to. It's already landed in Westeros. So, yeah, it's just, it's very hard to square that. Like, if he wasn't a Blackfyre and this wasn't a Blackfyre rebellion, then, yeah, no, it's not a red herring. It's the worst. It is the worst way to dismiss like a solid idea is just to call something a red herring. Like, no, it's not. It's called, he spent 5 books setting up the Blackfyres. And as Tim is pointing out, a lot of work in Feast to set up the Blackfyres. So,
yeah, because we don't have Jon or Dany in Feast, or Tyrion in Feast at all. And Tyrion's the one who's been our biggest mouthpiece for this, because he's the one literally traveling with fAegon. And yet, even in a book where he is completely absent, we get so much Blackfyre stuff because of Septon Merrybald and Brienne's travels through the Riverlands. And this is when we get the story of the Crossroads Inn.
Yes, which people were asking for earlier. Here it is. Good on you for remembering that. This is another big Blackfyre thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, he forged a new sign for the yard, a 3-headed dragon of black iron that he hung from a wooden post. The beast was so big it had to be made in a dozen pieces, joined with rope and wire. When the wind blew, it would clank and clatter, so the inn became known far and wide as the Clanking Dragon. "Is the dragon still there?" asked Podrick. "No," said Septon Merrybald. "When the smith's son was an old man, a bastard son of the 4th Aegon rose up in rebellion against his true-born brother, and took for his sigil a black dragon." So this is Daemon Blackfyre and Daeron the Good. "These lands belonged to Lord Darry back then, and his lordship was fiercely loyal to the king. The sight of the black dragon made him wroth, so he cut down the post, hacked the sign into pieces, and cast them into the river. one of the dragon's heads washed up on the Quiet Isle many years later. By that time it was red with rust. And also this idea of the dragon's head washing up, I think the same thing happens with Vhagar when after they or Cyrax, one of the dragons after the God's Eye battle, when they dredge up Aemon's body, the heads of one of the dragons is also like turns up later.
There's more to this quote, though. They've found like 6 so far, and they're waiting for a 7th, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Because the thing was a 3-headed the original sign that he's talking about was a 3-headed dragon, but only one of the heads has shown up. But the dragon must have 3 heads. So
no, that's not it. That's not it. They've found 6 pieces of this because the sign had like a bunch of pieces. Remember, it's a dragon sigil, but made of multiple pieces. And I think it's 6 that have washed up so far because there have been 6 Aegons. And so they're waiting for the 7th, and fAegon will be claiming to be Aegon the 7th.
So the beast was so big it had to be made in 12 pieces. So it's made from 12 pieces. One of the heads shows up. Yeah, I'm just missing how. If he has a line where he talks about other pieces showing up, I don't have that line.
I could be misremembering. There's a lot of ice and fire in my head, sometimes. Let me pull it up in Kindle. Because there's more of this that is a foreshadowing than just But okay, well, the point of the rust. Explain the rust part.
So that's going back to that line of like black or red, a dragon is still a dragon. So it's like if it turns red with rust, it means the black dragon turns back into a Targaryen. Well, that's fAegon being a Blackfyre, but representing himself as a Targaryen. He is a black dragon.
Correct.
Painting himself as a red dragon.
Correct. That is the idea.
And that's why this whole the red and black stuff too, like Dany in the house with the red door, but fAegon being the black dragon, and especially George drawing so much inspiration from music. It's a lot of Rolling Stones painted black in there with the constant going back from the red dragon to the black dragon stuff.
This is going to be hard to... here it is. Oh, I was getting this confused with the rubies, guys. Yeah, Terra Incognita is just remembering this. Okay.
Oh, the rubies from Rhaegar's breastplate?
Yes.
Yeah, those got scattered at the Trident.
Let's see. Yeah, all we do is, let's see. We are blessed here. Where the river meets the bay, the currents and tides wrestle one against the other, and many strange and wondrous things are pushed towards us to wash upon the shores. Driftwood is the least of it. We have found silver cups, iron pots, sacks of wool, bolts of silk, rusted helms, and shining swords, aye, and rubies. Sir Hyle said Rhaegar's rubies. It may be, who can say? The battle was long leagues from here, but the river is tireless and patient. 6 have been found. We are all waiting for the 7th. So, that has to do with the idea that, I guess fAegon would be Aegon the 6th if he takes the throne. And then Jon would be Aegon the 7th if he's Aegon, I guess. Or maybe Dany is the 7th. Yeah.
I really don't think Rhaegar... I mean, the show went that route, but I don't want to believe he would name 2 of his kids the same name.
Yeah.
I like to think that Jon's name is Aemon, and because that follows the tradition of Aemon never sitting the throne.
I agree. Yeah, maybe... But I mean, maybe it's just that there is 6 have been found, and fAegon is going to be Aegon the 6th, Rhaegar's son. But they've also the rusted dragon that seems to represent a Blackfyre washed up, and it's like these Rhaegar's rubies have also washed up. So they seem like kind of parallel symbols. By the way, Tim, Thinking Ironborn for a second, and I'm just going to tease this. Quiet Isle with the elder brother, right? Grey King's elder brother. Potentially, we talked about this parallel. Quiet Isle full of driftwood stuff. The cave in the hill, everything is driftwood. Furniture, cups, plates. I forgot about this. Like, they do the driftwood life there, the elder brother in his cave. So, like, I totally think there's a secret Weirwood cave under Naga's Hill. I think elder brother was definitely like a drowned priest. We could talk about this another time, but the Quiet Isle parallels are stacking up. And even the dragon that washed up on shore is probably Grey King coming from the Great Empire of the Dawn, you know, on his dragon boat washing up on the Iron Islands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good connection.
So
Yeah.
anyway, just a little free.
Anyway,
Watch my Grey King video.
So the next thing that I noted was that we did the story of the clanking dragon, and that story is told to us by Septon Maribold. So the next section. So we talked about the original 2005 reading. Then another thing I've discussed before, and Quinn the GM did a great video on this on his Maylee's video. And this is how I learned about this: is George's original working drafts for Feast before the split.
Oh, this is really cool.
The stuff that's archived at Texas A&M have been made available, and you can look at George's original working drafts for Feast before he split it into two books. And one of those early drafts is a Tyrion chapter where Tyrion is sitting in on one of fAegon's history lessons with Holden Halfmaester. And they are talking about the War of the Nine Penny Kings and Maylees the Monstrous. The Maylees the Monstrous is the leader of the 5th Blackfyre Rebellion. The fifth rebellion is more like a subset of this bigger overarching War of the Nine Penny Kings and the whole Band of Nine. Septon Maribold fought in that war. And he comes home with like PTSD and he becomes a broken man. And that's where we get the whole famous broken man speech. But eventually he becomes a Septon and he does his best to make peace. And that's why he leads the settlement at the Quiet Isle with other broken men. And it's why it makes so much sense why the Hound would be there. That's
part of the idea that Grey King's elder brother is actually a drowned priest of the first men Ironborn who've been squisher farmed. Elder brother, or you say Maribold or elder brother? I think it's Septon
Maribold.
Okay, well, elder brother, I guess it's Maribold too. Does he the one that drowns in the trident and washes up on Quiet Isle, or is that elder brother that does that? I think that's elder brother.
Yeah, let's see what Maribold had. So
it's one of the two.
Maribold was born. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything about him washing up at
that was elder brother then. So elder brother who lives in the driftwood cave drowned in a river, so he's not squishered out like Patchface. I'm not saying that, but symbolically. Yeah, Grey King's Leal elder brother, that wasn't his elder brother. That was a priest. That was the first drowned priest. That's who crowned him. And this is all pretty sick. It verifies some of my theories that you're going to get in the next Ironborn video. I'm going to crack your guys' brains open. Be prepared. New stuff. Brand new stuff. I'm just teasing it right now. Basically, like, I figured out that when you look at the Ironborn culture, you can peel apart the first man layer and the ancient mariner layer. And we only just started to do that in the Grey King video. In the next video, I'm going to really, really, I'm going to blow your mind with George's world building. So let's be clear. My mind is blown at what George has done, and I'm going to try to pass that along.
All right. But what I'm getting at is here. So Septon Maribold is a veteran of the War of the Nine Penny Kings. And the War of the Nine Penny Kings was ended when Sir Barristan Selmy slew Meleys on the Stepstones. So now, so Barristan Selmy ends the Fifth Blackfyre Rebellion, but Dany is going to have these 3 betrayals, and we've spent a lot of time. There's been a lot of speculation on who those betrayals are going to be, and some of them saying there's the idea that Barristan might betray Dany, especially if he catches wind of fAegon, because Barristan had deep respect for Rhaegar. He loved that. He loved Rhaegar like a son he never had. So if Barristan hears about fAegon and betrays Dany to go champion him, thinking that he's Rhaegar's son, but he's actually unintelligent, he might do that, but in reality, he's going to fight for this, leaving Dany behind to fight for this kid he thinks is Rhaegar's son, but in reality, he's unintentionally kicking off the 6th Blackfyre Rebellion when he is the one who ended the 5th. That's some deep cutting irony.
I hope it doesn't happen, but I could see the sense in it. Yeah. A theory of ice and fire, can I please beg you to leave the Jacob thing go for just a half a minute? I love you and thank you for Squisher patroning me, but just... Yeah. Anyway, so...
But yeah, like if we... Dany's 3 betrayals, yeah, if Barristan ends up being one of them and it's to go fight for fAegon, but he's actually fighting for a Blackfyre. That's the type of stuff that George... That's the type of irony George, like, thrives on.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And Jon Con is almost going to set up to become a broken man, like, in a way, once all this stuff is revealed. But, okay, so we already did this stuff, did we not?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we pretty much covered everything we jumped around, but we did cover everything that I wrote in the outline.
Yeah, we did all this pale hair stuff. I just didn't scroll down when you did it. Yep. Okay, so big galaxy brain thoughts here on how these ideas are going to move. So for the people that want to believe, there's going to be enough credible stuff for sure. Sword Blackfyre, guy that looks kind of like Arthur Dane if you squint. Okay. To believe. But let's talk about what ways could the truth get out? We talked about Slayer of Lies. Like how the hell would Dany know whether or not he's real or not? I mean, the one idea that we've really talked about is the dragons determining, like, oh, FAegon tries to ride a dragon and it roasts him, so he's not a true Targaryen. But like, people with the blood of the dragon can't always ride a given dragon. Like, that's not how it works anyway. So do you think, is this a glass candle? Because Dany could be using a glass candle by then, so maybe that's how the truth will be revealed to her. But like, is there any other way that the truth could be revealed that you can think of, Tim? From literally anybody. Who can unmask the lie? If he gets Grayscale, he isn't a true Targaryen. Wrong. Grayscale was created as a disease specifically to inflict upon the Valyrians by Garren the Great, according to legend. And whether or not Garren the Great did it, I think there's no doubt that Valyrians caught Grayscale at when they were conquering the Rhoynar. Like, supposedly hundreds and thousands of them caught it. So Targaryens are not immune to Grayscale. That is false.
No, in fact, while we've never seen a Targaryen catch Grayscale, we do know they can die from disease, and that's the whole point of the shivers during Jaehaerys' reign.
Also
when
true.
His daughter dies of the shivers, because it pokes a giant hole in the doctrine of exceptionalism that he had created.
But who would be able to expose? I mean, there's no way to really expose. Like, you can't. It's like proving a negative. You know, everyone's like, well, we saw Rhaegar's son die. It's like, well, his brain was bashed. You don't really know. There's not.
I think
you can't do a genetic test, you know.
And I think that's what's so why there's so much layers in that red or black a dragon is still a dragon line, because even though Illyrio and Varys are full of shit and are trying to prop up their own pet project king, at the end of the day, the small folk aren't going to care if he's Trueborn Targaryen or Blackfyre. They're going to care of, is he a good king? And if he actually is able to do good, and Dany comes in and ruins that, they're not going to care that she's Targaryen. They're going to see her as, well, you're this foreign woman. Like, hey, we've been going through hell for years. He was doing good. He was trying. He didn't fix it in a day, but he was trying. You ruined it. Now we're back to square one. That's the perception that people are going to get.
Okay, so Guilty Undertaker's pointing out Tyrion. Tyrion is already on the trail to figuring out what's going on. But what proof would Tyrion be able to, or even not even proof, but just what kind of argument would he be able to present on Dany's behalf in a letter sent to the High Lords or something that FAegon isn't Rhaegar's son? Like, I don't know that there's.
So that's another reason why this chapter, when it came to dance, that the whole history lesson that he sits in on is dropped, because the talk about Meleys the Monstrous, and Tyrion drops this line of, well, people looked at Meleys and saw a monster. Maybe things will be easier for Dany because she's a lot prettier and people follow pretty things. That could be it. Like the fact that, and also Holden Halfmaester has this. This is why I really think it's worth looking just to read these 6 pages that are worth a stream all of their own, because they are crammed full of symbolism. Holden talking about the plants, about how all the flowers have names, but what's really important are the roots, and then Tyrion dropping the line of, well, people are willing to put up with monsters if they come in a pretty package. It's like, I can see exactly why George rewrote it, because it really hammers even more of this Blackfyre stuff home. But it would also give Tyrion more reason to suspect of, why is his history lessons being made so much about Blackfyre history?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then a Theory of Ice and Fire, no, it's not really a debate. If the Valyrians can catch Grayscale, then so can Targaryens. The Targaryens are not different from the Valyrians. And literally the first occurrence of Grayscale in the historical record was thousands of Valyrians getting inflicted with it. So there's literally no reason to think that the Targaryens or the Valyrians would be immune to Grayscale. I just don't see how that's a debate.
Yeah, because Grayscale is a result of water magic that the Rhoynar were using to combat Valyrians.
That seems to be that's how I read it too. So yeah,
it's Pokemon rules. Water has the type advantage over fire.
So it's certainly not something that could be used to prove FAegon's Targaryenness or not. No one's going to think, oh, he's got Grayscale, so he's not Rhaegar's son. That's not a train of thought anyone will have. Stephen Malcolm, Thank you. How's it going? Going good. Going great. We're having a good time. Doing lots of stuff on the channel, making lots of videos. You guys, don't do drugs, kids. I praise Garth. I praise Garth. I don't do drugs. You guys should not do. And by drugs, I mean the bad drugs. You know what I'm talking about. The party drugs, the stuff that... Don't do it. Like, look at me. I'm 43. Okay? I banged out all these videos. I went to a party last night. I went and saw a dubstep. Last night, went to an after party, stayed up all night and the night before. And I still got all my work done. And I feel great. Because I don't drink. And I don't do hard drugs. And that's, honestly, people ask me, like, the secret to my youth. Yes, I'm a fun guy to hang around. Lucas, of course I'm a fun guy to hang around. I'm just saying, like, no drugs have ever gone up my nose, ever. And, like, the occasions that I'll drink more than 2 drinks are very rare. So, just health tips. Oh yeah, and drink water.
Yeah. I just thought of Bob Saget line from Half Baked about marijuana is not a drug.
It's
Like,
it's in a
I used to
different class. I'll at least say that. I mean, it's in the class of like caffeine's a drug, and there's lots of things that are drugs that are on a certain level of
it's the follow-up line of I used to suck dick for coke. That's an addiction.
No, Tim. Tim. You always do it. You're so genteel and polite, and then once a stream, you
We're
say
3
something
hours
like that.
I had a clean mouth for the first 2 hours. I'm just quoting Bob Saget.
I'm gonna have to end the stream now so I can go back and if I need to edit this. If you got I don't have to end the stream now, but if in the future you see a slightly shorter version of this live stream, it's because I had to go cut it off right before Tim said that.
Carl, Tim has a past. Go on.
You're consistent. It's definitely like it's just like Bob Saget. That's the thing is it's just like Bob Saget standing up and saying that in Half Baked. You're like, oh my God, this wholesome feeling guy just said this incredibly vile thing. So that was an Inception moment because you quoting Bob Saget from Half Baked was actually you reproducing the archetypal moment there. That's awesome. Okay.
I think we were online to wrap up anyway because we covered everything I wrote.
That was unexplained profanity inception is what that was. Anyways, now hopefully, usually we don't get demonetized just for saying one or two swear words. And you didn't say the F word, which seems to be more of a trigger than other things. So hopefully we'll be all right. But
yeah. So
no, it's
okay, so
it's the Coca-Cola part I was more worried about, Lucas.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
So to go back, trying to get back on your
yes,
question,
make a serious point, Tim. To pull this out of the gutter. Let's see how you do.
Yeah. So trying to get back to your question on if fAegon is going to be exposed, and my response is I don't think it matters. I don't think that's what's supposed to matter because I think what it is supposed to be the perception from the people of was he a good ruler from those who, and that comes from either those who believe that he's a true Targaryen or those who are just unhappy with the way things are and are willing to back this horse. Because when we go back and look at the first Blackfyre rebellion, the thing that started all, that is what mattered. Didn't matter that Daemon Blackfyre was a bastard to people like Eustace Osgrey. What mattered was the perception, how they viewed him, and how he was their ideal of what made a good king. The name meant nothing. That's why they fought. That's why they backed him. Or so Eustace Osgrey is a true believer. He believes in Daemon Blackfyre. Then there's the people who just see what they can get out of it. People supported Daemon Blackfyre because they wanted to go back to when his dad was in charge, when you could just buy whatever you want by giving your daughter to the king. Because how does Lord Butterwell get a dragon's egg? It's because Aegon IV banged his 3 daughters in one night. Like, you could easily bribe Aegon IV, and people profited from that. They wanted that back, and Daemon Blackfyre was definitely prone to flattery. That's another reason why he launched his rebellion.
And then there was a lot of anti-Dorner sentiment as well that played into it.
That too. So you have your believers, and then you have your people who are looking at it and thinking, what can I gain from this? And that's what fAegon's going to have to deal with. The people that truly back him or the people who just think they can get something out of him. And that's going to be the driving factor in what gets him on the throne and what the people's response to it will be when Dany upends this. Because if he does a good job, nobody's going to care that he wasn't really a Targaryen. They're going to care that he did a good job and she ruined it. That'll be the perception.
So a couple points on Grayscale. One, I think the idea of Grayscale as a curse being inflicted on the Valyrians is that it's a reverse of dragons hatching from stone. They're turning back into stone. So it's kind of like a fun but cruel inversion of the idea of dragons waking from stone. I don't know. fAegon catching Grayscale could be interesting, but I just don't think he'll be around that long. I think it's more that Jon Con will spread it as an epidemic, but I could be wrong. And then the other thing is, okay, so a theory of ice and fire. What I think is going on with the Valyrians, because there is some idea that Valyrians are at least resistant or less prone to common sicknesses. Grayscale is a magical disease. It potentially created by the Rhoynish water wizards to inflict on the Valyrians specifically, but perhaps it's just a magical disease inherent in the world. But I don't think that operates like the flu and stuff. So I think with the blood of the dragon, we've seen they like the heat. Like even, Dany walking into the fire is a miracle, but it's a miracle that a dragon person can perform. And on top of that, in general, the Valyrians are more heat tolerant. So one imagines that their blood temperature, their body temperature might be just a little bit higher than the normal human temperature. And even if it was only a couple of fractions of a degree, that might totally change what kind of bloodborne pathogens and things would be able to live in your bloodstream, because all of these diseases that people catch have evolved for thousands of years to live in our bodies. So, you can only go too far with the science, but the idea that the Targaryens have hotter blood is probably means they're less susceptible to diseases and stuff. But there's no question about Grayscale. The Valyrians caught it in large amounts, so the Targs would not be immune to Grayscale.
So, if we think, though, blood of the dragon and dragons being like lizards, like reptiles are cold-blooded. It's not so much that they like heat, they need heat. So for something like Grayscale, which thrives in cold and damp, if you need heat, Grayscale would be a complete burden to you. Grayscale would be the depth. For something that needs heat, Grayscale would be the ultimate weapon.
Perhaps, but I don't think the Targs are implied as cold-blooded. I think it's the opposite, so I don't know if that tracks, but...
Yeah, but it is another reptile connection at the very least.
Yeah, the scale thing is obviously there too, so, But yeah, it would turn a Targaryen into a gargoyle. And the thing about gargoyles is the legend of the first gargoyle is that it was a dragon that was menacing a town, a German town. I think it was Rugen, it's called, Ruin or something like that. And they cut the dragon's head off. It turned to stone, because that's what happens when dragons die in this tale. And then they took the stone dragon head and they mounted it on the church to ward off the other evil spirits. So it's kind of like taking a wolf and turning it into your guard dog. So yeah, the legend of the first gargoyle comes from a dragon. So dragons turning into gargoyles makes sense. Tim, did you find what's going on?
Yeah, someone put Lady Stoneheart. Yeah, a Targ died from Grayscale, the Septa Miguel. Yes. Okay, so one of Jaehaerys's many children.
Oh yeah.
Becomes the Septa, and she's taking care of children with Grayscale, and she ends up catching it. So yes, Targaryens can catch Grayscale. Miguel Targaryen dies from Grayscale.
So that is not a debate then.
Thank you.
That is a fact.
Yeah, they are not immune.
There you go. And I think that's just because it's a magical disease. It doesn't have anything to do with, catching the flu a little less often. Because Dany does walk around amongst the plague victims, and not get sick at all. So do other people as well, I guess. But Dany's really touching everyone and stuff, like without hesitation. So anyway, all right. So what I was trying to get back to was Galaxy Brain thoughts about fAegon, how he's driving the plot. We talked a lot about her and Dany. Someone jokingly mentioned, what if Jon Con finds out about Jon Snow, who really is Rhaegar's son? I don't think they will, though. it's funny to think about. But I think Jon Con, his plot is going to run to the end of its course in King's Landing there. But
yeah. I think, Jon Con's story is going to be him embracing Tywin. It's going to be embracing Tywin's actions. Grayscale eating at his mind, and possibly, like I presented here, possibly being snubbed if fAegon does not name him Hand. Because, again, that's an assumption he has made, that he is going to be Hand.
Yeah. I wonder, I was talking about, what if Jon Con finds out that he's been duped and that fAegon isn't real? But again, I don't know how he would find that out. Who would be able to convince him of that? It would have to be Varys himself somehow confessing. What if Jon Con gets the suspicion and then, grabs him by the throat? I don't know. I really feel like Jon Con strangling Varys is a thing that's going to happen.
Yeah. But if we think of Jon Con as an Alan Cockshaw figure, Alan Cockshaw was convinced somehow convinced himself that Daemon II would have named him to his Kingsguard. So that fits in line with Jon Con convincing himself that FAegon's going to name him Hand.
Well, no,
if it doesn't.
He thought John the Fiddler was going to be his boyfriend.
Yeah. He thought he was going to be able to have He thought he was going to be named to the Kingsguard, and they were going to have a secret relationship like Rhaenyra and Criston Cole.
That's another Jon Con parallels. My point is that Jon Con was in love with Rhaegar. Cockshaw is in love with John the Fiddler, but unrequited.
Yeah.
So, down the well with ye, Jon Connington. Oh wait, no, he's got Grayscale. Don't do that. Okay, so I really think that if Dany is responsible for fAegon's death, she will feel bad about it. Her only evidence that he's fake might be visions that she has. So she'll be able to question those and go, did I kill a member of my family indirectly somehow or directly? So this could be something that turns Dany away from the quest for the Iron Throne and prepares her to receive Jon Snow's message about the others and turn north. Yeah, you can't do that while I'm live streaming. Sorry there, guys. Decide to have a tantrum.
Because even if he's not true, if he is Blackfyre, while it's definitely a lot of generations removed, he still would be some kind of cousin to her at the very least.
True.
And that falls back with the original Perkin Warbeck, who, even though he was a pretender, it is noted that he looked so much like Edward IV that it was plausible he might have been a bastard son. He wasn't who he was claiming to be, but that doesn't mean he didn't have a connection. And I think that's what we're getting with fAegon. It's a far removed connection if he's a Blackfyre, because of how long it's been since the original Daemon Blackfyre died, but it is still a blood connection.
And I guess we should point out that, of course, part of this is that George is skewering the idea that any bloodline has a divine right to rule over other people, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea that people aren't sure if he's real or not is kind of part of the point. Ultimately, the only thing that should matter is if he's doing a good job ruling.
Yeah. It's ultimately Varys' riddle to Tyrion. Where does power reside? It resides where men believe it resides.
And correct, if he's a Blackfyre, he could theoretically be a dragon rider. Absolutely. There's So let's talk about that, actually.
Jon the Fiddler had dragon dreams.
What's that?
I said Jon the Fiddler had dragon dreams, so Blackfyres do have these Targaryen dragon motives that doesn't disqualify them from being dragon riders.
Right. So let's talk about that option. We've been saying, I think he's going to get eaten by a dragon, and maybe he will. Maybe he'll be in a dragon fight. To have a real Dance of the Dragons redux, fAegon should have a dragon. So, do you think we see some dramatic thing where Dany like challenges him, like, go ahead, prove it, ride a dragon? Maybe he does, or maybe yeah. So I'm asking this to the chat and to Tim. Give me scenarios where fAegon can actually get his hands on a dragon. Could it happen in the middle of the battle? Dany's trying to take King's Landing from fAegon, and Rhaegal or Viserion just lands, smells the Targaryen blood, and comes and lands on the Red Keep balcony, and fAegon just climbs on, and Dany's like, WTF, Rhaegal?
Yeah. So if this would happen, it would be a rewriting of Quentin Martell. Because when Quentin approaches Dany's dragons, he's doing so with the idea that he also has Targaryen blood. And that is going back to an older Daenerys Targaryen, Daeron the Good.
Right.
He had a sister, and part of the way that he was able to bring Dorne into the fold was he married a Dornish woman, but that he also married his sister off to the Prince of Dorne. And that leads us to our original Martell. So Quentin Martell, Doran, Oberyn, they do have Targaryen blood from like a great grandmother. And that's his idea of why he thinks he has a chance of the dragons not roasting him.
Which is cute, yeah.
Which is cute, but it doesn't work in his favor. However, the same would apply for fAegon. He would have some kind of, if he's a Blackfyre, he would still have some kind of Targaryen blood, which would give him the notion of, oh yeah, I can approach a dragon and not immediately be killed. Just like work up that courage that Quentin found. But the difference would be, do the dragons respond to him the way they responded to Quentin? Or do they go the opposite direction and they actually accept him?
Yeah, and I just want to point out to the chat, the idea that there's some sort of dragon hatching thing that follows the female line is a theory. I think it's a cool theory. That's a Preston Jacobs theory. Definitely worth watching and checking out. Not a fact though. So ease up on the all caps because that's a theory. I always present my ideas as theories because, so we know what the book tells us as fact and what is theory. So that's important to remember. And that's anyway. But yeah, so the other question is, who have the Blackfyres been marrying? So there's the Bright Flame idea. There's Sarah Targaryen. And there's the fact that the Lysene people have Valyrian blood themselves. So if you're married, like the Targaryens occasionally wed people from Essos who looked Valyrian. So the idea is that the dragon blood follows the looks. So if someone looks very Valyrian, they potentially have more dragon blood.
So the other one that we know of is one of Daemon Blackfyre's daughters. So he has 7 sons, 5 are named, 2 are unnamed, and he also has 2 daughters. One is named Kala, and she is married to Bittersteel. And Bittersteel is another bastard son of Aegon IV. So that would be, so if there is a Bittersteel Kala line that we don't know of, that could, and then that would be, their children would be both nieces and cousins to Daemon Blackfyre.
That could be part of the reason why Bittersteel doesn't participate in some of the subsequent rebellions. Because he's nurturing his own eventual candidate. By the way, look for Alec is on Instagram as King into North with an F, King into North. A very funny follow. Lots of good memes. Occasionally featuring this David Lightbanger guy who looks a lot like me, but the kind of like David Blaine. I'm not sure what's going on, but follow King into North. So okay, so how could he ride a dragon then? Like I said, I'm talking about scenarios, like story scenarios. We all agree that potentially he's got some blood, that if George wants to, he could hop on a dragon, the dragon accepts him, and we'll all be like, well, he's got the blood of the dragon. whoever he is. So yeah, how does it happen? Like I said, I think one of the dragons in the battle literally could just fly to him because they sense the dragon blood. There could be a more of a dramatic thing where Dany and fAegon are having some meeting, either because one or the other has gained an advantage, probably Dany, and she's cornered fAegon, but hasn't just obliterated him, and he's basically in a sort of trial by combat way saying, well, let me prove it, which would be a potential Quentin foreshadowing. I just think that it could go either way and be interesting. Like if the dragon accepts him, it's interesting. And if the dragon eats him, it's interesting. So I really could entertain both stories there. Right?
Yeah, it's one of those ones. It's a coin flip at this point. Either way it go, either it eats him, and we get that parallel, that original Dance of the Dragons parallel, or it accepts him. But then the question is, well, which dragon would it be? Because we've also said, well, if Euron steals a dragon, Viserion seems like the most likely candidate, having the ice dragon thing. So and it's definitely not going to be Drogon. That's obviously Dany's dragon. But could it be Rhaegal? If it's the dragon that's named after Rhaegar, the one that he's claiming his right, because Rhaegar is his maybe daddy. That's where he's basing his claim off of. If he's able to claim the dragon named after Rhaegar, that would definitely also cement him further.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. And if there's a dragon fight, then Dany might have no choice. Because I don't see Dany just executing him in cold blood. But if he gets his hands on a dragon, then you could see the dragon fight. Because the whole reason that George has decided to... Well, I mean, not a whole reason, but one of the main reasons that we got Fire and Blood in between Dance and the next book is because George was thinking, I want to show people what dragon fights are like before Dany and Jon or whoever start getting in dragon fights. And now we know it's pretty awful. And usually everyone dies, including the dragons many times, or they get horrific wounds. So now we understand, like, if fAegon climbs on the back of a dragon and takes to the air, it's bad. And if Dany gets on her dragon and takes to the air too, that's real bad. And, we're kind of prepped for this. So that could be interesting. And then, of course, if he gets eaten or roasted by the dragon, it would parallel Quentin, but also another important character from the Dance of the Dragons, whose name I will not say in case there's somebody who doesn't know about how that ends. Yeah.
Silver Dennis.
Right.
Everyone forgets about Silver Dennis.
So this is my meme here, Tim. Hello, Auntie. I'd like a dragon, please. Dany Targaryen, destroyer of worlds. Yeah, so there you go. I think there'll be some interesting possibilities there with fAegon. And I do think, yeah, Jon Con is such a loose cannon. Darkstar is a loose cannon. The Sand Snakes are loose cannon. Arion's a loose cannon. The Horse Girl, Elia's a loose cannon. Like, it's a lot of loose cannons rolling around King's Landing. Just cool. So, guys, do we have any final questions about His Name is fAegon before we close this one up and get some food and take care of our pets and stuff?
What do you think would be Blackfyre's house words?
Let me go back and take a look at the off-topic ones that I got.
Yeah, what do you think? My friends thought of we bear the sword, but it would be a bit awkward if they also lost said sword. Yeah, that's an interesting thing, right? So, because what happens to the sword is a huge question, because we never hear about it after the first Blackfyre rebellion. It's a very much a point in the Mystery Knight that Daemon II, John the Fiddler, does not have the sword. So at least at that time, we can be feel that that at least then it's probably in Bittersteel. But from the third Blackfyre Rebellion on, its name never comes up again. The third Blackfyre Rebellion ends when Aegon yields his sword and he is treacherously killed, possibly by Bloodraven, possibly by Aegon Brightflame. But it's never said if that sword he yielded was Blackfyre or not. And it's never said if Maelys was wielding Blackfyre at the Stepstones. Like, we really don't know what happens to it after John the Fiddler is taken into custody. So I've often thought that maybe that at some point, if they fall on hard times, they might have pawned it off, and that would be how it ends up in Illyrio's possession. If they pawn off Valyrian steel swords the way that Dany and Viserys had to pawn their mother's crown just to keep food on the table, like if that could be a thing.
Yeah, because if Sarah really comes from a pillow house in Lys, she doesn't have Blackfyre under her bed, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they have to pawn it off to keep like the Golden Company going through like some hard years, that's also a possibility. Because it has to get into Illyrio's hands somehow for him to be able to give it back.
Okay, so Barris Aurelius has a cool idea. Let me get your opinion on this. Any chance fAegon pulls a Quentin and tries to take a dragon after befriending Dany, accidentally setting off wildfire caches, maybe in a way that looks like Dany killed him? So this is an interesting idea. Dany's potentially open to doing some sort of agreement with fAegon, potentially considering a marriage or some, like, there are definitely, like I said, Dany's looking for family. There are scenarios where there could be a period of time that they don't go to war. Okay? And so perhaps if that's the case and Dany's in the Red Keep or whatever, yeah, one night fAegon tries to go out and ride the dragon and dies or succeeds, but yeah, it goes wrong on the first flight or something. Dany could get blamed for killing him. And that's happened over and over to Dany. She actually did put Drogo out of his misery, but she's blamed for killing Drogo, for Viserys. In Slaver's Bay, they make up all kinds of things about her. I guess Hisdar's been taken prisoner now. She'll get blamed for that probably too. So yeah, I could see that. That's an interesting idea. What do you think, Tim?
Well, there is one, but it would be a spoiler for House, but there is a moment during the dance where someone tries to ride a dragon that isn't theirs and gets thrown off of its back. So maybe if he tries to ride a dragon, but the dragon ain't having it, that is a possibility.
Yeah, I like that just because I hadn't thought of it before. So it's a new way to stretch out. If you think about it, like, George likes to write dialogue a lot more than battle. So ideally, he likes to put people like Jaime and Catelyn, who are enemies, in a situation where they can only talk to each other. And then you get this really bitter but interesting dialogue. So, like, not that it would be bitter between Dany and fAegon, but like the interesting thing is to have them talk to each other. So we should expect that there'll be some time before all-out war, or maybe after a bit of fighting and then a truce, or who knows what, where they will be talking to each other and having dialogue. So the idea that fAegon would have a chance to try to ride a dragon himself spontaneously is also in play. Yeah.
You know, now to think about it, it would make sense for that to happen too, because we've talked a lot when we've done Winterfell streams, and I've talked about, well, when the Stark kids come back together, they're just going to be happy to see each other, but it's going to fly in the face of the people that have been supporting them, because Wyman Manderley is hitching his wagon to Rickon, but Littlefinger's putting on Sansa, but then there's Robb's will. So that happy moment where the Stark children come back together might be interrupted by the power plays of the adults around them. That, if the same thing happens with Dany and fAegon, where they're actually able to find common ground, but things are messed up by the people around them, that could be a thing. That gets us both that and Ice and Fire. Well, that'd be the Fire side of that happening, the Fire family being who wants to just make nice, but the people around them won't let them. And the Starks are our Ice family, trying to get back together and be happy, but the people around them won't let them.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I could see this. And so I guess the point is, like, fAegon is a really interesting character for many reasons. And part of that reason is that there's so many ways he can affect the plot and create some really interesting storylines that are going to involve Dany and Cersei and all the Martells in King's Landing and, the Sword Dawn and Darkstar and eventually Jon Snow. Like, there's so much that fAegon touches on. So not even in the show, just chopped right out. So that's a thing. And this is one of the reasons why when people run around saying, oh, the books are going to end just like the show, like, there's 18 different ways we know that's not true. And one of those 18 ways is fAegon. He's going to completely change the whole Cersei-Dany dynamic and the Jon-Dany dynamic. It's going to be totally different. So, could Euron kill fAegon? Well, we were talking about that earlier. Euron declaring himself king in Old Town would set him up as a rival to fAegon. Euron might get... That would be funny if Euron... Not funny, but Euron calls Viserion somehow with his dragon horn to the High Tower. Mm-hmm. And fAegon tries to ride Rhaegal. Yeah, all kinds of things are possible. If Euron does get a dragon in Old Town, then he could fly with that thing anytime and end up in King's Landing that way. But probably George will keep him for later. And also, I think his plot line somehow got to go north to intersect with the others. Yeah. But we'll have to do that. We'll have to talk about that a different day, how Euron's plot lines are going to play out. That's really a different question.
Yeah, I feel like Euron is Jon's battle to fight, and fAegon is Dany's, and that's why Dany and Jon are our split prince that was promised or princess that was promised.
I think you're right, and your cat is being really cute right now. Obviously, Damon loves you.
I know, David. His name's also been said a lot every time we say Daemon Blackfyre. It's like, oh, Daemon, we're not talking. Kind of. We're not talking about you.
It's like if Daemon Blackfyre's name was Cleo.
Yeah, but you chose. Yeah, so I'll just tell the story quick. So the night I brought Daemon home, I asked him, "Are you a Targaryen or a Blackfyre?" And I laid out my copies of Fire and Blood and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And he put his little paw on Fire and Blood first. So I said, okay, I guess you're a Targaryen. But I definitely, especially with the white tip on his tail, I was definitely thinking Daemon Blackfyre when I named him.
We know where your loyalties lie, Tim. Cool. Well, that is pretty fun. Good stream. Good fAegon discussion there. I think we covered most of the bases. And, I don't think Bran is going to come into exposing the lie of fAegon. It's got to have something to do with Dany. Bran's not going to be in King's Landing anywhere near that soon, so. Yeah. Oh, let me check the PayPal real quick. Let's see. Oh, this looks like more of a personal question, but no, I can answer it. Let's see. Advice for Callie. I may be moving to San Francisco soon. Are you staying in the area? I'm not sure what I'm doing right now, honestly. I'm considering a lot of options. I'm in Sacramento at the moment. I don't know that I'm going to stay here, so there's certain reasons for me to move to LA just because of the entertainment industry and all that shit. But I'll let y'all know when I figure it out. I'm probably going to move locally first before I do anything dramatic. And my advice is to make sure you have a lot of money if you want to live in San Fran or LA or any place like that. So, yeah, guys, I think I'll wrap it up here. Thanks a lot. Subscribe to Grey Waste Tim. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you're not already. And please watch the video that comes out either tomorrow afternoon or Tuesday morning. It'll be a Bolton Theory video. So please check that out. I would appreciate it.
Yes, Damon does have a red collar. Of course, I had to deck him out in Targaryen / Blackfyre colors.
Just set him on a red satin pillow, and he'll make a sigil.
His little cat harness is red, too, for him to go walk. He's like...
No, it's got to surround him in red so that he is the sigil. That's how it works. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Happy full moon, happy Halloween. And no, not Bolt On. Better than Bolt On. Better than Bolt On. Although Bolt On will be discussed. This is my original Bolton theory. I'm going to tell you, this is exactly what the Boltons were doing. If you didn't see this in the Stark Iceberg, this is hot shit. This is a real fresh theory. I don't think anyone's ever come up with it before. And the more evidence I look, the more I find. The more I look for evidence, the more I find. So, see you guys. Talk to you next time.